Welcome to Spockcast, Season 4, Episode 1. We're back! We're back! Woo! We're back! Hooray. I mean, never gets excited.
The unflappable Jaime Lopez.
My name is Tim Mitra. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mr. and Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there.
And we have Jaime Lopez Jr. on the left coast in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
All righty. So it's Stardate 98830 Mark 64. For those of you playing along at home. Quick fact check. And it's been a while since we were on. I can't even remember. I vaguely remember the context of this question, but I think I was talking about the fact that David Tennant's father-in-law was also a doctor of lore. And that's actually the correct pronunciation. It's not Doctor Who, it's the Doctor. So Peter Davidson played the Doctor after, what's his name?
You fell down your own rabbit hole.
Yeah, I fell down my own rabbit hole. So Peter Davidson plays the Doctor. He is the father of David Tennant's wife. So David Tennant is his father. Peter Davidson's David Tennant's father-in-law. And there's been like many times when they're seen out at dinner together, and people just their minds get blown. You know. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so we since we've been away for a while, we have a lot of stories to cover. We've been culling them here and before we record, and so Jonathan's going to lead off with some headline Trek news. No?
It's been so long we forgot how this works. So in our show notes, I'm actually first, which I can understand because the JVK also starts with J. You just skim to look for T's for Tim.
All so I get that. It's a boring story. I don't know why you people are even tuning in. Go ahead.
So what has happened, we've talked about Nickelodeon getting this 4 kids Star Trek show called Star Trek Prodigy. That was originally going to debut on Nickelodeon, but in the whole new Paramount Plus version of the world, which is CBS All Access, but now with Viacom CBS combining together with Paramount, they've rebranded under the more global brand of Paramount Plus. And so now Star Trek Prodigy will debut on Paramount Plus before going to Nickelodeon, presumably for free over the air. Well, or cable over the air, I guess. It's not really over the air.
And this is the one where Captain Kate's going to be on it as well?
Well, Catherine Janeway is going to be on, and so this is an animated series, so, as a voice actor, presumably, unless they do like Blue's Clues or something. And it's unclear, where in the timelines is this state, because we know from Star Trek Nemesis that Catherine Janeway was eventually promoted to Admiral, but, it could be that there was some period of time between bringing Voyager back, spoilers for Voyager.
Maybe she stole Voyager, went to rescue Tuvok or something.
Yeah, I mean, people are looking at the main characters here, and they look largely like new species, although there are some folks who are thinking that, hey, the second person from the left, we'll have the link in the show notes for those of you transporting it home, might be a Talaxian. So people are wondering, is this one of Neelix's folks? Like a very sort of stylized and sort of portly, chubby Talaxian, but possibly. So.
And I think they said at one point that the entire bridge crew is non-human, right? That was sort of a milestone that they were going to hit with this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at all the characters of the show here, and not a single one looks like a human, so it's got to be something kind of different, and animation lends itself to that for sure.
And there's one species there that doesn't have 2 arms, 2 legs, two eyes, and ears,
Well, that just undoes an entire Star Trek Next Generation episode.
Does it?
Well, remember the one where they find out why they all have 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head?
Yeah, I didn't buy that one at all. That's where I was going with that. Yeah, that too convenient. Yeah, okay, whatever.
I also saw a little tidbit related to Prodigy online that Billy Campbell is going to be reprising his role from TNG as the outrageous Okona for Star Trek Prodigy. He said that in a podcast recently.
Billy Campbell, remind me who that is?
He was in a memorable sort of a roguish type character who interacted with the Enterprise D in I think it was season 2 or 3. He was a guest star and made an impression as this sort of ne'er-do-well but was actually doing well character that sort of had this cult fandom around him. And
the Rocketeer, that's who he is.
Well, yeah. But he's going to apparently come back and reprise his role on this show, which is kind of neat too.
Canada's own, isn't he?
I don't know if Billy Campbell's Canadian.
And he's in Cardinal, which is a great show I've been watching for years. Yeah, that's why I recognize the name.
Yeah, he's again, he's had a 30-year acting career, and again, really his impact on Star Trek is that one episode. But I guess it was so memorable that he's got a fan base around him. So he's back.
He's back. All right, cool. Wait, what's next? Oh, some guy had a birthday.
It was some guy's birthday, and a funny birthday it was. So William Shatner, beloved Montrealer, Canadian, was celebrating his 90th birthday this week. And, we're all on board for the Shat. I'm glad he's still with us. We've unfortunately lost so many members of the original crew so far. And he decided to celebrate this by telling People magazine that he has never watched Star Trek.
The TV show.
The TV show. And as a matter of fact, the movies as well. He said the only movie he's actually seen is the one that he made, which is the worst one.
Yeah.
So the only thing that William Shatner, legendary actor, Captain Kirk himself, has never seen a single episode of the TV show and none of the movies but for the worst one. Now, if I had seen just that one, I wouldn't watch anymore either. But I wasn't in the damn things either. So
yeah, well, he also, there was another story too about him this week that he did something like he had himself
he turned himself into AI.
Digitized. Yeah.
So, he's his gift to humanity. He's turning himself into AI so that he can be an interactive AI long after he goes.
So was that the video that they showed of the guy talking to him? Was it were they talking to the physical guy, or was that supposed to be talking to the AI? I didn't really watch it.
Yeah, I'm not clear on what that was about, but yeah.
Yeah, we never watched it, Bill. So
sorry, Bill. We watched the Star Trek show. We're busy watching that. We didn't have time to watch your weird AI play
video. Yeah, or T.J. Hooker or Boston Legal or my favorite. One of my favorite Twilight Zones is the one where he's on the plane and
that's a great episode.
Passenger.
Yeah, with the gremlin on the wing. Oh, that's such a good episode.
Yeah, that was before. And Leonard Nimoy was in a couple of those too, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. More follow up for next time.
Yep. And another little piece from this week that was really interesting. So Wesley Snipes is back in the news because he was one of the actors in the new Coming to America movie on Amazon, the Eddie Murphy,
great, by the way.
Arsenio Hall flick, really funny sort of sequel to the original 1990s movie. And when he was making the rounds, somebody asked him the question, hey, is it true that you were up for the role of Geordi LaForge? And he said, yeah, I was actually, and talks about how kind of close he came to being in that role, which is, I never heard that previously. I thought that was really interesting. He says, yes, it was true. I think it was back in the 80s, and I was disappointed I didn't get it. Not as disappointed as it was of not getting a role in the original Coming to America, but it turned out pretty good because if I'd had that role, I would have been on television more and I wouldn't have had a chance to do more movies. But interesting that, can you guys imagine Wesley Snipes circa 1986, 87 being Geordi LaForge?
It's a weird one given where his career ends up going. But I guess, I don't know, I guess even LeVar Burton's is kind of weird where he's, you don't have to take my word for it, reading Rainbow Guy, and also
and he was Kunta Kinte.
Very serious actor Kunta Kinte. So it's like very, very sort of wildly different sort of thing. So maybe Wesley Snipes could have.
But he was Kunta Kinte before he was Geordi LaForge.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I was not really of the age to understand this, but historically I'm under the impression that it was very sort of weird to have Michael Keaton, the comedian, cast as Batman, and I just grew up knowing him as one of my favorite Batman.
Oh, it was a big kerfuffle when he was announced. People were like, "Mr. Mom, really? Mr. Mom is going to be Batman?" That was that was people were really questioning. And he was a stand-up comic before that too. Like people were really not sure that was going to work out, and it did. So you never know. Yeah. Maybe he would have been like the baddest version of Geordi LaForge. He would have been like way more intense.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I hadn't read that somewhere in IMDb. Like
I think it was one of those things that people had sort of
forgotten.
Or had known, like mentioned and stuff like that, but it never really had talked to him about it. But I thought it was an interesting little tidbit. Anyways,
cool.
And next we have this was a big story this week. So we have been following this, as have a lot of Marvel fans, and there are a lot of Marvel fans. So we knew that they have been bumping their movies around all over the place the last year or so because of the pandemic. And we weren't sure how that was going to play out when it came to the long anticipated and much delayed Black Widow movie starring Scarlett Johansson. The movie was scheduled to be coming out at the beginning of May, which is very soon. And while there are some places in the world and in North America where you can go and see a movie now, there certainly is not enough that, you know, sort of gets into that regular Marvel, we expect $1 billion out of our movies kind of area. So this week, they finally confirmed, after much speculation, that Black Widow is coming to Disney+. Now, it's still going to be available in theaters in places that you can go and watch a movie. So if you have it available and you want to go to a movie theater, you'll be able to see it. But they have bumped it too. They've bumped it to July the 9th. So it's going to be treated just like Mulan was, and like the new Pixar, or not, is it Pixar or Disney? I guess it's just Disney, the Raya and the Last Dragon, where you pay a premium. It's, I think, $30. And you pay your $30 and you get to watch it as much as you want. And then the expectation is that, just like Mulan and previous films, you'll then be able to watch the movie for free, 3-4 months after that. Mm-hmm. And they've also, as part of that same move, they bumped a couple other things around. They moved the release date for Shang-Chi and a couple of other pictures as well. Are you guys in any way surprised that they finally made this move?
Well, based on what we saw with Wonder Woman, no, not at all.
Yeah.
I was, until I saw an article last night or today that said, oh, they sort of didn't really have a choice because there's stuff that is going to need to be shown in Black Widow before all these other films can happen. So we'll maybe talk a little bit about this, but WandaVision was not supposed to be the first one of the series. It was supposed to be the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, kind of a more traditional show, and then go into the weirdness. And then, okay, now that's going to line up into the Doctor Strange sequel. That got thrown a little bit for a loop, not too bad between these two shows, but this article that I had seen had said, oh, well, they really need Black Widow to happen prior to the Hawkeye series and prior to Shang-Chi and a whole bunch of other things. So I think they might have just had to bite the bullet and say, okay, forget it. Like, the consequence of having this highly tied together, multi-series idea is that some of these have to go out at certain times, no matter what, so the rest of them can line up properly.
So it does continue the big bonanza too, because we're going to come from WandaVision and then I think a week off, and then we're going to get into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then we've got a few weeks, and then it goes into Loki, and then that'll key right into Black Widow coming out after that. So it is still sort of a big progression, but it's nice that the options available again in places like where Tim and I live. There's not a realistic chance you'll be able to see this in the theaters in the foreseeable future. So it's nice to have the option on the table.
Yeah. And this is Disney Plus premium thing. Yeah. So just so folks understand, you are effectively buying it, but only in concert with your Disney Plus subscription. So you'd still need to maintain Disney Plus to continue it. So I probably will break open my wallet for this movie, but I did not do that for Mulan, and I did not do that for Raya and the Last Dragon. So I'll probably wait out Raya and the Last Dragon to let it be free, or at least I presume it will be free on Disney Plus at some point, and then pay for Black Widow.
And it makes sense in that way too, that they have it come out, and then maybe by the fall it'll be there, and then hopefully that'll give people, even if they're waiting for it for free, that'll give them a chance to watch it before the next sequence of films start to release.
Well, speaking of films coming out, the next Spider-Man has a date, and it has a title. So Spider-Man No Way Home, continuing in the Homecoming and Far From Home sort of way of naming the subtitles, is apparently, and granted, this is an article from February 24th of 2021, so I did not check to see if this is still true. Apparently this is coming out only in theaters December 17th, 2021.
Yeah. Or, stay tuned.
Or stay tuned. There is no Sony Plus that I'm aware of, but I actually don't remember if this is still in partnership with Sony or has reverted or not.
No, this one is in partnership still. However, the previous two Disney Sony collaborations are not available on Disney Plus. So I would be really curious to see what might happen if that does come to pass. Will they just bump it into next year? Will they move their whole schedule, or will they have to reach some sort of agreement to put that on Disney Plus? Because there is, yes, you're right, Jaime. There's no other venue for it really. So it's either delay or Disney Plus,
right,
or they go straight VOD.
What was that? I guess this is semi spoilers for Schitt's Creek, the Canadian show. Like, was it Interflix? Was the made up streaming service for like weirdo movies?
Yeah.
I want to get the Crow movie, Crow 3. They have a Crow 3 T-shirt you can get.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was like Crow 3, the Crow inning or something.
The Crow inning. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. The next one I've got is about something I have been hoping for since I was a boy. There is talk that the Last Starfighter sequel might actually happen. So this has been sort of brewing in the background for a little while now, that there was, a lot of people who love that movie from, I think it was 1984. And a lot of people have wanted that to happen. So Gary Whitta, who is the writer of Book of Eli and Rogue One, has been working with the original writers, a guy named Jonathan Butel, and they have been working on this and trying to basically get a good idea down and work their way through it. And just today, they released basically a sizzle reel of the concept art to the music from the original soundtrack, and with a little bit of taste of what it might look like. And I got to admit, I was pretty excited. And he said, let's see, what was the quote? There was a great quote on his Twitch stream today. He said, "It's right on the 1 yard line, and he believes it will happen."
Cool.
So yeah, I mean, again, cool concept. It seems like something you could easily move into, the now. You bring back, Alex Rogan, the kid who played the video game so well that he got drafted into the Space Army and went off to become the last Starfighter. I think you could carry that forward into, a new one, come next generation, bring back some new people and stuff like that. It's not a remake they're talking about. It's a sequel. So they're talking about sort of carrying the concept forward, 40 years. And
so he's playing on his Nintendo Switch instead this time?
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to set it up. If it's going to be like a VR thing or how they're going to do it. But yeah, again, it seems like a no-brainer that, the concept itself works really well. Unlikely hero, gets swept up in a space adventure. It really is a timeless kind of picture, although it's very rooted in the 80s if you go back and watch the original. But yeah, I think it could be a really good one, and I recommend people check out. We'll have the sizzle reel for people to have a look at, but it's very cool. I really think that could work.
Yeah, my understanding is it's one of the first movies to use CGI.
It was
it the first? I knew it was one of the earliest, but wasn't sure.
No, the first one is that the one where the first time they used a CGI character was a stained glass window that comes to life and is a knight and fights somebody with a sword.
Yeah, but this one's one of the first ones where the space scenes and stuff like that, they didn't use model work. They did the whole thing on computer. Yeah. And it was, for the time, it was like an unbelievable step forward. Again, it doesn't hold up perfectly now, but when you look at that within the context of when it was made, it's pretty remarkable.
Right.
And the last thing before we get off of this topic, because I had to go look up The Last Starfighter. I have seen the movie. It's been a very long time. I was a very young child when I saw this, and I said, oh my gosh, what was going on with aliens in the 1980s? And if you, again, you'll have to pull over your vehicle and go do this yourself, but look up The Last Starfighter. Take a look at the alien guy. Okay, get that mental image. Now go look up Enemy Mine. A movie of like two a human and an alien guy having to like trust each other, and then think about that concept of have to trust each other and work together even though they're not friends. And then think about Darmok, the episode from Star Trek: The Next Generation, and look at that guy and say, wait a minute, these are all like the same person. Like this, like the same alien species practically.
Did that one makeup artist get like passed around, or what was the deal?
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's a funny observation.
There's lots of instances where costumes were passed around and sets were passed around.
Oh yeah.
Right? So,
I mean, it's definitely not literally the same, but like, you turn and look, and then you turn and look at something else. You'd be like, is that the same one? It's that close. You'd have to think about it.
Yeah. Well, for for spoiler warning for a future episode of Spockcast. I was rewatching Firefly and the Alliance. The army guys. Their helmets look a lot like that other movie, the Highland one.
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. Yeah, the helmets look exactly like the same outfits, just painted slightly different. Right. I have to go and check that out on IMDb to see if they borrowed stuff. That's cool.
Yep. Back to Disney Plus, because apparently Disney Plus is where everything's happening. The Star Wars Holiday Special, in part, is coming to Disney Plus.
Now, you should have said just Star Wars Holiday Special and let people try not to throw up in their throats, right?
Oh, I'll let that soak in for a second. The Star Wars Holiday Special is in part coming to Disney Plus. Dramatic pause. The cartoon in which Boba Fett makes his debut is going to be coming to Disney Plus. Now, they're not going to put the rest of the special up, including, B. Arthur's musical number, Harvey Korman's cooking show, some of the really tragic parts of that.
This is actually from the holiday special.
This is actually, it made its debut in the holiday special. It was the first time we ever saw Boba Fett. It was produced by Canada's Nelvana Studios, and it was the first time we ever saw the character of Boba Fett. And so they're bringing that to Disney Plus so that people can actually see that in legitimate form. Now, Disney has gone way out of its way since this was announced to say, the original, this little animated short is called The Story of the Faithful Wookiee. They've gone way out of their way to say nothing else from the holiday special is coming there. However, in addition to that, they are also bringing The Caravan of Courage and The Battle for Endor, the two Ewoks made-for-TV movies, to Disney Plus too. So it is going to be a delightful time for cheesy Star Wars.
Wow, heavy cheesy Star Wars.
Yes. Oh, and they're also bringing the Gennady Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, which I'm excited about. I loved that series. I thought that was brilliant. Mm-hmm. So this is the guy who did Samurai Jack.
Oh, right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. He did 2 sort of short seasons of these little 5-6 minutes. I can't remember what they were. They're shorts of these little short episodes that were sort of bridging it was the original Clone Wars, and he did them and they aired them. I think both in Canada and the United States. They were on the cartoon channels, and I thought they were amazing. Really, really interesting. Really well done. It explains how Anakin got some of the scars on his face and in combat and some of those things. Really, really interesting take on that. And of course, this predates the Clone Wars cartoon that most of us know, of course, which was CGI. So that'll be an interesting one to go back and revisit, because I thought that was excellent.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah, Dexter's Lab is another one of he had a whole bunch of shows around that same time on Cartoon Network, Adult Swim type era.
Yep. Yeah, no, and a really, really different take on that sort of universe. Very quiet, those episodes. Not a lot of dialogue, a lot of just sort of, action, and it was very sort of samurai prequel kind of thing going on there. Next up, just a quick one. So we had talked in a previous episode about the fact that the CW had optioned doing a new TV show based on Wonder Girl. And the Wonder Girl that they were going to focus on was this new character that had been created for a limited DC Comics event called Future State. And they were going to take this story of this, unusual new character and turn it into a show. Apparently, they passed on it. So we talked about, what an interesting and weird choice it was to do this. Apparently, whatever it was they were thinking about, they've decided not to go forward with it. So that one is kiboshed. So we don't have to worry about that one anymore. Cross that one off your CW list.
Good. Go on.
One less thing.
Yep.
Speaking of Star Wars, we have not had an episode of Spockcast since the untimely or timely, as you depend on your perspective, demise of Cara Dune. The fact that Gina Carano, who played Cara Dune on the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, was fired from her role on the show after some controversial tweets on social media. And not only has she been removed from that role, but there was rumors that she was going to be the lead in in the Rangers of the New Republic show that they had announced, and they never confirmed that, although I think a lot of us speculated that that would make sense because the character was popular and had been established. But that was a bit of a surprising move. She had sort of dipped her toes in the flames a few times, but had come out unscathed. And I guess she went a bridge too far for Disney, and they finally pulled the plug on her involvement. And this led to some interesting ramifications, and not the least of which is the fact that they have said they will no longer even manufacture any toys with her likeness.
Really? Wow.
They are sort of going kind of scorched earth on her. So they canceled future releases of Cara Dune action figures. The very last figure they're going to put out is one that my dear colleague Tim has kindly given me for Christmas that is on its way. They're doing a vintage series. We hope, yeah. They're doing a vintage series where they're doing a series of Mandalorian figures that look exactly like the 1970s and 80s Star Wars figures with the packaging and the sort of stiff arms and everything like that. They look really sort of retro and fantastic. That is going to be the last Cara Dune figure that they release. And after that, they're not doing any more. They've canceled any future releases, and they're not making any more of her old figures. So if you go on to sites like eBay or Marketplace or other places like that, her figures are now selling for upwards of $100 because they aren't making any more.
But I saw somewhere that Gina Carano is going to end up on some show. Didn't she get some other work or something like that?
She did sign with. She signed to do a project for a network that I had never heard of before. Jaime, maybe you have more insight into this. It was something in the United States. It was led by a right-wing organization that wanted to get into more production, and she was going to move on to that to do more work, but it was certainly not of the stature of Star Wars.
Yeah, it's kind of the equivalent of like getting booted off of Twitter and then having to move to Parler as the place that you do your business, right? I had not heard of it until this came up that she has new roles with an alt-right, at least very far right leaning production company. So she'll continue to have work.
And she was also she was dropped pretty hard across the board. She lost her agency. She sort of became persona non grata in a big way. I don't know how to, I mean, we've run into these things before where, you sort of get a character and then, you get these clashes where sometimes it's the character is cut because the actor or actress doesn't work out with the studio or doesn't work out with the showrunner or the director of things. This sort of cancel culture-y thing that's happening here. Obviously, that's been a term that's been thrown around a lot, especially on social media and especially on sort of, right-wing media the last little while. The idea that, say the wrong thing and you're going to get canceled is sort of relatively new concept as far as these things happening. But it seems to me like Disney is going to hold a pretty hard line on this stuff. Like they don't seem like they're messing around. And maybe they were making an example of her as basically saying like, anybody who is working on these Marvel, Star Wars, big projects that really matter to us, if you cross these lines, they are going to go scorched earth.
Interesting.
It's disappointing. I mean, realistically, it's disappointing as a fan because, she had turned into, an interesting character enough that, they were obviously looking at spinning her off and that, she had some moments in the show. I don't think she was, a star yet, but certainly somebody that, was a good character. And again, from the show's perspective, a somewhat positive portrayal of, of a strong woman who, was not the damsel in distress at any point, and those are all positive things we like to see in our shows. So I don't know. I mean, it's a funny thing, again, especially in a show with like Pedro Pascal could lose his job tomorrow. He wears a mask all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be really careful when you're dealing with an organization that has tied itself so stringently to the kind of values that Disney tries to keep itself to. So
what I was going to say was that the it's kind of like the known thing for years is if you're looking for a job or whatever, you got to be careful what you put on social medias and what you say, and because they could go, people could go back in time and find something you said. And here's a case where a high profile person lost her job or her role because of something she did on the socials as it were. Right?
Well, and it happened, we talked about it in a previous episode, and I realized how it was playing out. So the actor who played the elongated man on the Flash TV show had found himself in hot water for some previous social media posts and was also fired from the show. And they just wrapped up the first new episodes of this year were the final 3 episodes of the season that they didn't get to finish last year. And they had that character appear in 2 scenes, one in which he was like horribly burned so you couldn't recognize his face, and one in which he was wearing a Daft Punk-esque helmet so you couldn't hear his voice nor see his face. And then they basically said, and we're going off to, I have to go and go back to my home planet now. And they just wrote him right out of the show.
Really? Wow.
So again, I think, it speaks so much to these things, that your digital life exists out there, and you have to be really careful what you say because it can have really big ramifications on your future.
Cool.
And one last little bit of Star Trek news. So speaking of casting in Star Trek, the actor who played Aladdin in the live-action remake, the Disney live-action remake of Aladdin, it's a man named Mina Massoud, has fueled a little speculation that maybe he's going to be showing up on the Star Wars live-action Disney Plus scene soon, as he's been quoting lines from Ezra Bridger from Star Wars Rebels. Now, Ezra, a character on Rebels, is brown. He's darker skinned, and as is Mina Massoud. So there's a little bit of a resemblance there, and there's been a lot of speculation, none of which has been confirmed, that perhaps he's either got the job or he's lobbying hard to get the job. And given his past association with Disney, that would make sense. And I don't know if you guys have watched all of Rebels, but there is it does tie into the forthcoming Ahsoka storyline, so that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm still trying to catch up on all those shows.
Yeah, it's a luxury and a torture to have so much content out there.
Yeah, exactly. And time. So I've got a story here about Kim's Convenience. Paul Sunwing from Kim's Convenience, who plays Appa, the older gentleman. He's about my age, actually, I guess so. But he plays the father on the show. He also appeared as Captain Teva, I think was his name, on the I guess it was Mandalorian, right?
Yeah, so Mandalorian, a couple episodes.
Yeah, so this is a story here from the Calgary Herald where he was being interviewed, and he's basically a longtime member of the 501st Legion. And he's been wearing, seen around wearing his Star Wars costumes that he's made and over the years, and he's also went to Fan Expo and Comic-Con dressed as a Ghostbuster once as well, and he made his own backpack and stuff. And apparently Dave Filoni is a fan of Kim's Convenience, and that's how the sort of things came together, and that's how one of the reasons why he ended up on the show. But if you're interested, read this article. And I bring up Kim's Convenience because I keep telling Jaime and Mark on the Slack channel that you see clips of Toronto around interspersed in the what do you call those smash cuts, right? And a lot of the shots that you see are literally my neighborhood, like the street corner where I catch this, where the beer store used to be, John. There's a scene with that one, and they play soccer at the park at the top of the hill from us, and. Yep. Yeah, I've seen. In fact, in this new season, which Jaime's going to have to wait a while to see, there's a couple more shots of my neighborhood too. So interesting stuff.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. And this is another one that I think is really funny. I saw this on Twitter just the other day, and I thought I got to put this in the show. Somebody's observed, and actually, I think it was Mark Hamill who replied that he'd never even thought about this. But Luke Skywalker has a problem with technology. So I call this Luke Skywalker the Luddite. So when he's trying to use the binoculars to see the sand people, he can't see them. He can't figure out how to get the the binocular thing to work. He can't see to fight the little orb when he's got the blast shield down over his face. He can't see when he's wearing a stormtrooper helmet. And when he's trying to blow up the Death Star, he has to turn off his computer because he can't use the computer to find the hole and get it in there. So yeah, apparently Luke Skywalker's a Luddite.
Is that why in the second movie he resorts to riding around on a giant beast that's going to snuff it in the cold?
Maybe, yeah, could be. They
were like, dude, take a snowspeeder. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm going to take this giant animal out here.
Maybe he's dangerous in a snowspeeder. Who knows? Yeah,
I like it.
He does crash his snowspeeder too, doesn't he?
He does. He gets shot out of the sky and kills his wingman and gets killed.
Sure.
Poor Dak. I feel like he could take on the whole empire by himself, and like 10 minutes later, he's dead.
Yeah. All right. So we have some sad news. I think we'll let Jonathan
little sad news. We have in the last couple of months lost some legends and some really some performers who I think we all really love. And so we'll run down and maybe have a little RIP for each one of these people. But over the past little while, we lost Christopher Plummer, of course, Canadian acting icon, really relevant for this audience. He was, of course, General Chang in Star Trek VI, this great Shakespeare quoting villain. Cry havoc!
William Shatner was his understudy.
Oh, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a lot of people remember Christopher Plummer from Sound of Music. Of course, that's one of his most famous roles. But I mean, this was an absolutely legendary actor. Oscar winner. 60 years career, just an absolute legend, and not the least of which is in this show's mind. We talk about him all the time being subbed in for Kevin Spacey in one of his last roles. And so, the ongoing jokes about Christopher Plummer being subbed in for any actor who gets fired, we were like, oh, now he can't play Cara Dune. Damn.
Right.
He was an icon, and he will absolutely be missed. Cloris Leachman, another one, again, huge, long career, tons of awards, just an absolute icon. Star, of course, in some of the Mel Brooks movies. She was, just one of the greatest comedians of the last, 50 years. And
Summer of 42, wasn't she in that? No, it was the black and white movie with the dude. Anyway.
Oh God.
She also played Frau Brooker in Young Frankenstein.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and she was in High Anxiety, and right. I mean, she was just she was so good. Last Picture Show, I think is the one you're thinking of. Last Picture Show.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Again, and I think she won an Oscar for that. She was, just everywhere, and of course, she was famously on Facts of Life in the 1980s, taking over for Mrs. Garrett, and she sort of developed a lot of fans at that point. So yeah, again, another one that's just a huge icon that we've lost. Yaphet Kotto also passed away, and people may not know Yaphet Kotto by his name, but boy, this guy's career, science fiction wise, very, very famous science fiction role. He was one of the original crew of the Nostromo in Alien.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he was also one of the game show contestants on Arnold Schwarzenegger's.
Wasn't he also Canadian? I hate to keep going.
No, he's American. He was an American. Oh. He was one of the game show contestants with Arnold Schwarzenegger and The Running Man in 1987. And again, one of the most famous roles that he ever had was Live and Let Die. He was the bad guy in James Bond, Roger Moore's first James Bond movie in 1973. So this guy, just a huge titan of films and in a lot of different roles. Again, I think he was... the rumor is that came out upon his death this week that he was under consideration for the role as the captain of the Enterprise D before Patrick Stewart was. And the reason why he was not interested or didn't pursue it more aggressively is that he had already done a couple of science fiction things at that point and didn't want to become typecast.
Wow.
But again, another interesting sliding doors moment for him. And again, just a huge career. Yaphet Kotto. I wondered actually, as I was thinking about him and reading the obituaries, if Yaphet, the character from the Orville, was named after him.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I was
spelled differently, but still.
Yeah, I was wondering when I saw it written here if that was a weird connection there.
Yeah, and then we lost two more people this week that hurt. George Segal, again, legendary actor, most recently well known for the last, I think, 7 or 8 years. He's been on The Goldbergs in the United States, the ABC show, very popular comedy. But I mean, this guy was all over the place.
He's
He
in
was
all
just
kinds of stuff.
Just Shoot Me, again, another famous sitcom that he was on, and before that, again, he was an Oscar-nominated actor for years and years and years. Again, he had almost a 60-year career. He was 87 when he passed away this week. Another just a titan, and again, just handsome leading man, still handsome at 87. Crazy how genetics works for some of these people. But yeah, he's another one who just he started off as a serious actor. He moved into some comedy roles and really made his chops in doing these different comedy parts and made these sort of really sort of kind of sketchy characters into very likable characters. He just had a really nice personality about the way he brought life to these characters. I'm a huge fan, and I'm really sad that he's gone.
So his top reference on IMDb is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Of course, and he was nominated for an Oscar for that. And I think both he and Richard Burton were nominated and didn't win, but then Elizabeth Taylor and I can't recall who the supporting actress was, won. But it was nominated for every award that year and did really well. And that really sort of jump-started his career. Again, just a titan. And the hardest one, the one that really killed me today, unfortunately passed away. Jessica Walter died today at age 80. She was Lucille Bluth on Arrested Development, is probably the role that a lot of people know her for. But again, a huge long list of acting credentials. And the role that I loved her most for was she has been the voice of Mallory Archer on Archer for the past 10 years. And she is unbelievably talented in that role. And I'm devastated that she won't continue in that role anymore. And it absolutely killed me this morning when I saw this news, or this afternoon when I saw this news. So yeah, I mean, a rough stretch. We've lost all these incredible performers, but I mean, man, what a legacy all of them leave behind for us.
Yeah, she was also the killer in Play Misty for Me.
She was,
I think it was
the Clint Eastwood movie.
His first directed movie.
Yeah. Famously in Carmel, California.
Well, there you go. Where he ended up being
the mayor,
right?
He was the mayor. Yeah.
Oh, show.
Yeah. So I mean, tough stretch, but I mean, all of them were older, so there's at least a little small mercy in that, and all of them had incredibly illustrious careers. So thanks to them, and boy, what a bunch of careers.
But I should bang out a couple of real quick Doctor Who ones. So we were talking about where Doctor Who is in the States. It's on HBO Max in the US. It's on basic Crave here in Canada, because we were talking about that the other day. I think we were talking about the replay of the second generation of Doctor Who's,
right?
Starting with Christopher Eccleston, right?
Yep.
And Doctor Who number 4, the person I couldn't remember, his name is Tom Baker.
Right.
But there's a really cool clip here on YouTube where he explains to his assistant about interdimensional engineering and explains why the TARDIS is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. So if you're interested, if you ever wondered about that, check out this short little video on YouTube.
Nice.
So that's that. We're just going to skip ahead to the main meat of the show.
I think so. I think we're ready.
All right. So this week we're going to take we're taking a break from Star Trek because there ain't no Star Trek right now. I mean, there's plenty of Star Trek, but you know what I mean. No fresh new meat for us to dig into. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to talk about WandaVision, and then we're going to talk about the that other big movie that came out last week,
Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah. All right, well, I do have something to say about the Justice League before we dig into it, but let's talk about WandaVision. WandaVision.
Wait, I get it. Well, I don't know that we need to get into a too detailed recap, other than to say it was an interesting exploration of the aftermath of those two very epic Avengers movies that preceded it, and the consequences there. So again, if you haven't seen those, spoilers, we're getting into it. The show is really a hard, at sometimes kind of lump in your throat look at loss and grief, and really sort of explored some interesting stuff that really couldn't have been done in a Marvel movie nearly as effectively. It was a bit of a puzzle box show. It was very much, especially those first, I think, 3 episodes were very much, oh, it's Wanda and Vision in Dick Van Dyke. Oh, it's Wanda and Vision in Bewitched. It didn't make a lot of clear sense. Clearly, they were trying to sort of, lure you in with the mystery of what was going on. And then we sort of get into the meat of it, which is, this TV show, that these series of TV shows are happening inside of this hex bubble, which has been created around this small town in New Jersey, and nobody can seem to get in or out of it. And from there, we get into the sort of, how do they get in? How do they get out? What's going on outside the bubble? What's going on inside the bubble? And it just turned into this really sort of it was a little more straightforward from there on, but it was also, it dealt with some pretty heady stuff, like the magic part of it, the loss, the
let's
grief.
not get into the spoilerific part without giving people a heads up, but I just want to say, it was interesting. Like like you said, the first sort of 3 episodes were kind of puzzling because they were in the sitcom, and if people had followed the Marvel movies, that Vision didn't survive in any capacity. Like not even from the snapping, he was dispatched by Thanos, who needed the gemstone on his forehead. I forget what it's called.
The Mind Stone.
Mind Stone. He needed that stone for the gauntlet, right? And of course, Wanda was, in love with Vision at the time, so she was devastated by that part of the movie. In fact, I think even in the rewind, like there was a section of the thing where I guess Doctor Strange rewinds time, and Vision also dies in that one too, right?
Well, it was Thanos with the Time Stone, because by that point he had the Time Stone, so she had to kill Vision first herself in order to try and prevent Thanos from getting it. So she kills Vision and destroys the Mind Stone, but then Thanos shows up with the Time Stone that he just got from Doctor Strange, rewinds time, and then kills Thanos kills Vision right in front of her. So she gets to watch him die twice, including having to do it herself once. Hard stuff.
Yeah, and so it was really sort of interesting. Like the first episode, you're left thinking, what the heck was that, right? And then the second episode, it was a little bit more got explained, because you start to see that, I don't forget the lady who's sort of uncovers it. She's standing at the street at the edge of the town, and the cops can't see that there's something going on there.
Yeah,
and she kind of just stumbles into it, and I think she gets sucked in, right? And becomes one of the characters in the story. But and then the way they sort of start to spin it, that the story, the TV shows are actually playing out in Wanda's head in a manner of speaking, right? Mm-hmm. So now, do you want to say anything before we get into the spoiler part, I mean?
I think that what I would say is it was kind of interesting to see how unorthodox it is, and especially kind of how it starts out kind of weirdly cheesy and goofy in the same vein as like Dick Van Dyke and
Bewitched
are goofy in of that era in the 50s and 60s, and then it starts getting sort of progressively sort of bleaker as things start going along. And it is interesting that the major theme that cuts across a few different characters is about loss and grief. And without spoiling too much, there is even like a weird theme song that comes out that they put out on like Spotify and Apple Music and etc. that gets heavily into spoilers. But it wasn't meant to be the first show. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is much more straightforward, normal, like, I've watched Marvel movies, I kind of know what to get into. This one is very heavily like, you have to know who these characters are. You have to know why they're important to each other, to the outside world, and it does not hold your hand at all in terms of what in the world is going on. This is a very tough one, I think, to get into if you're very casual as a fan. And I suspect, given what I've seen of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that one's a little bit easier of like, okay, guy with a metal arm, guy with, robotic wings. Okay, got it. Go punch stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So before we get into this, I want to say too that it, like, for me, like, because I didn't really remember the sort of connection to all of the pieces, Disney has put together on the Disney Channel. They've put together some sort of small vignettes that you can watch, which recap. They take parts of the Avengers stories, the various movies over the time, and they do an episode on Wanda. They do an episode on Vision, and then they do an episode put on them sort of together. So you get to see Thanos kill, the Vision and stuff like that. So you get to, it's kind of like outside of WandaVision, but it recaps the two characters so you know who they are. And I think we talked about it on the show because we knew that it was coming out, but I think that they were supposed to be going to be doing that kind of thing for other characters that are in the Marvel universe, right?
Yeah.
But just by splicing together clips from the actual movies as opposed to producing new stuff.
Well, it's a real kindness that they're doing for the fans who either want a brush up, because again, if you wanted to watch, there hasn't been a ton, but if you wanted to watch the entire sort of evolution of those two characters, you are looking at like 10 hours of movie watching to get all. I mean, you could fast forward to their scenes, but if you don't know where you're looking, right, it's a chore. So it is a service.
People may not know that Vision started out as an AI in Tony Stark's computer,
Right.
And then kind of evolved and then got a body. Actually, it wasn't called Vision originally, right? It was called something else.
Well, it was going to be Ultron's body originally, right?
Yeah, no, but I mean, like the name of the computer when
Jarvis. Who's Jarvis?
Jarvis, yes, yeah, he became. So that's the character that Paul Bettany played, right? And Tony Stark creates a body for him, or not for him, but creates a body, and then he ends up occupying it and becoming Vision. So folks, this is the spoiler part. We're going to take a few minutes and talk about some stuff that if you haven't seen WandaVision yet, I'll put a chapter note in the stream so you can skip ahead to avoid this. So we were talking about the whole grief thing, and what happens if you take someone who has superpowers or powers, right? Because she wasn't born with them, she gained them.
Well,
and give her. Wait, hang on, and give her. Well, it depends on if you're into the comic lore as well. I know it's a different story with Scarlet Witch and stuff like that, but if you imagine someone like that who has that kind of power, and I think Superman and Lois is doing the same thing with this new spin-off, and they go through some traumatic PSD kind of trauma. What happens to them if they've got this power and now they're able to, through their grief, not even knowing that they're doing this, create this chaos, right? So I have a couple questions about this, and maybe you can, as you talk about it, you can expound on this. So I got a little lost in terms of whether this is Wanda creating the hex sphere, or the other witch creating the hex sphere, or just sort of the whole circumstance of all these forces coming together.
Yeah, no, it was Wanda. It wasn't initially an intentional decision. They reveal in one of the episodes that she goes and is trying to retrieve the Vision's remains from SWORD, the government organization that is possessing them after the events of the Avengers movies. And when she goes there, the acting director shows her his body sort of disassembled on a pile of tables, and she realizes that he's truly gone. And then she goes to this small town in New Jersey where he had, I guess, given her a gift of this property that he envisioned that the two of them could build a house in and settle down in eventually. And of course, that never could happen because of his death. But in that moment of her grief, she just sort of lets loose this power that she didn't know she possessed, that was beyond what she thought she was given by the Mind Stone, by the Infinity Stone. She unlocks this power that was actually magical, and that's where sort of Agatha comes in later on, saying this is not the magic. The magic is something different than what you're talking about. That you may think you have gotten these powers unlocked by the scepter, but you are this person. You are the Scarlet Witch. You are the magical being, and you are doing this stuff.
She already was this. She was born as this person.
Yeah, and they make a point of saying that she, because her origin story that they talk about in the Avengers movies previously is that her parents were killed when a bomb broke through their ceiling, killed her parents, and she and Pietro, her brother Quicksilver, were trapped under a bed looking at this Stark missile waiting for it to go off, and it didn't, and they survived, but they decided to take revenge. That's how they sort of get mixed up with Hydra, and that's the plot of Age of Ultron. And in this series, Agatha says that bomb didn't go off because it was faulty. That bomb didn't go off because you're a witch and you stopped it from going off. You had those powers already. You were already doing magic without even realizing it. So it really kind of retcons her instead of her being this, gifted these powers by the actions of Hydra and by these decisions. She was actually, it was basically just, they helped her unlock who she already was.
How does it play out in the comic books, like in the graphic novels, in terms of how does it?
She has a very complicated comic book history. So, she first appeared as a character in the early 1960s. She was a member of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, confusingly named so considering she's a woman, but she was one of the members of that. She appeared in the X-Men comics. She eventually, and not long after, she and Quicksilver realized that they didn't belong with that. They reformed, and they were named in the second group of Avengers to form a team. So Captain America, Hawkeye, and the two of them sort of took over when a lot of the original members went off to their own adventures. And so she was a mutant, which is the sort of Marvel's, genetically born different kind of characters. And that was her story for a long time. And then there had been sort of a bunch of different stories over the course of her arc over, it's now 50 years, where she was established that she was actually a magical creature, that she had, she was this sort of creature who was unique in the multiverse, where she actually, there's only one of her across the multiverse, and she was one of sort of these anchor people who have these special abilities. And they introduced the fact later on that Magneto was actually her and Quicksilver's father, and then later on they actually retconned that out. So she's had a real sort of up and down storyline. This storyline touches most heavily on a storyline from a comic called the West Coast Avengers, or Avengers West Coast, where the Vision, who in a previous storyline had basically gone sort of super analytical. He'd done a bit of a Hal, right? He basically said, the only way to fix the problems that the world is facing is for me to sort of run things. And so he kind of went Ultron-y and decided to try and take over all these government systems. And so the government decided, you know what, let's just do something preemptive. So they kidnapped Vision, and they wiped his mind, and they basically restarted him from scratch. And that was the White Vision. And as part of that storyline, she kind of lost her mind. And from there, she kind of was a bit of a fragile character. And that storyline carried forward with her being kind of straddling the line between a good and evil character for a while. And then she kind of had, at one point, a complete mental breakdown in a storyline about almost 20 years ago, and she killed a bunch of the Avengers and was, a real problem. And then she at one point basically rewrote reality, even more so than what we've seen in the show, where she basically created a new reality where, mutants ruled the world, and then that didn't work out. So she basically, undid that, and then she erased almost all the mutants from Earth. So she's been a very complex, very troubled character throughout her comics history. A very, very interesting character and a very good character. And some of that, I think, Lizzie Olsen has played really, really well, as showing her to be both interestingly strong and also interestingly fragile.
Interesting.
So they did pull from some existing storylines. If you are fans of some of this, the actual printed original material, there's certainly lots of stuff in there for you to sort of pull the threads on. And because this story was so much a puzzle box, WandaVision, the show, was so much of a puzzle box, people were really going a lot to the source material and trying to see if they could find bits and pieces and theorizing, maybe this is the real character, maybe this is the real villain. A lot of people were really rooted in the idea that there had to be a guiding hand behind this, that there had to be some big bad, some sort of Thanos behind the scenes that was sort of manipulating her. And in the end, there was, to a certain extent, but really what it was this was a manifestation of her trauma and her grief and her loss. And I think that's so much more poignant.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see how things went along. week by week. And that is something that if you haven't watched the show and you're somehow listening to the spoilers and still going to go back and watch, it will be very different sitting through and binging the series than it will be experiencing like, what the heck just happened? Whoa, Pietro is the actor from the the X-Men series of X-Men First Class series of Quicksilver. So people were starting speculating about multiverse, especially because
that was the same guy. Like this, he wasn't the guy in the movie, but he was the guy in Mutants.
Yes,
or X-Men.
He was the guy. The actor was the actor Evan Peters from the last few Fox produced X-Men movies, not the actor who played the Quicksilver character in the Marvel universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
Yeah.
But the character was the same, though, right?
But the character was the same.
They even mentioned like, what happened? Did Wanda recast, because it's supposed to be like a TV show that did they recast Pietro? Did she recast Pietro? And people started thinking like, is this multiverse? Especially because we know about Doctor Strange and the multiverse madness or something. I forget what that title is.
Multiverse of Madness. Yeah.
And so people got really into that. And no, it actually ends up being a penis joke of who this character's actual place is, and it was just sort of a treat for the fans and not necessarily part of the overarching story. And it was also interesting to see like this show goes a very long time before revealing the big bad, and there were 1 week early there were people who were like, what the heck, where's the big bad in the show? We're like 6 or 7 episodes in, and I still like what they did, right? With having Agatha Harkness, and it was Agatha all along, right? That was the song that they opened up on all the music services. But I think it would have been more fulfilling to me if Wanda's grief had 100% been the entire root cause of this. And I was rooting really hard for that to be the case. Yep. I was wrong. I still like what they did. I just like it a little bit less than, hey, what happens when Superman cries sort of concept.
Yeah. Although it was, really it was her. Obviously, Agatha was giving her a push here and there, but it really was like she created the hex bubble. She rewrote the universe. Like she really was the problem as well as the eventually the solution.
That's true. And she ends up sacrificing a lot, right? She gives up Vision. She gives up her children to make things right. And the stuff that they did between the Wanda Power Vision and the rebuilt White Vision was actually really cool. And they do fight each other for a bit, but in their case, they sit down and have a philosophical discussion. And,
was it the ship of Theseus?
Yeah, and Vision, Wanda Power Division unlocks the memories of the White Vision, and as folks have said online, it's not going to be exactly the same Vision, right? Like the White Vision does have the memories, but without that Soul Stone, he's not the same person. It is in a metaphorical and literal way. It's like he's lost his soul. He's alive. He's got the memories of that past life, but very similar to the comic book series is like cool. I remember having a wife. I remember children and stuff, but I'm not the father sort of thing, right? I'm a different being. So that'll be interesting to see how they play with that. So I did like that part.
Yeah, which is strange because, if you want to get into that whole Socratic argument, if he's like my Mac and your Mac, Jaime, are identical, right? And yet your Mac has different stuff on it than my Mac does, So your Macintosh computer is not the same as my Macintosh computer, right? So because they have different, 1 0 stored in them, right?
Yeah, if you think about, so here I am at 39 years of age. I am, from a Ship of Theseus standpoint, quite literally not the same person I was at the time that I was born, right? Yep. Every single cell has been replaced potentially multiple times over in my body. Am I truly the same person? And to make the kiddos sleep all that much better tonight, think about the fact that I really don't have any idea that when I go to sleep and I wake up in the morning, am I even the same person, or did I get Picarded, or did I get transporter beamed and murder destroyed and recreated as a perfect copy? I have no way of knowing that.
Yeah, that's true.
Sleep tight, kids.
Yeah. And yet he's the same person who remembers being, 3 years old and running across the lawn and stuff, right? To this day.
Yeah. I don't know. I think all in, when you look at this show, it was really ballsy to make that the first one, even if it was done by necessity, not by, choice. The thing I think I really enjoyed about it, obviously I come into these things with some more detailed knowledge than others. One, I have a very solid memory for what I watch. So I've obviously watched the movies very intensely and intently and remember everything. But also I've read tens of thousands of comic books. So that's all in there too. So I'm looking to sort of see the patterns and everything as well. But this show was a troll job, like a fantastic troll job by Kevin Feige. Like they were deliberately trying to throw people off the scent on a few different things, like casting Evan Peters as Quicksilver so that people would think there was a multiverse element. There was some real good stuff in there about, what people thought was happening. Everybody and their mother thought that, Mephisto was going to show up, who is one of the very old Marvel villains, basically the devil himself. They thought that was going to happen, and they lead you down a few different paths at different points in the show, and they really kind of built it up. And the online communities were just biting hard on this stuff, and Feige was zagging all over the place. And I thought that was fantastic. The part where, when they talk about Sword, and at one point, Monica Rambeau, who is the character, she's the daughter in Captain Marvel. She's the little girl, and her mom is the best friend of Captain Marvel. She's now grown up. She was blipped away. She came back after the blip. She's now back in service. She's doing this job. She at one point makes a reference to the fact that, I've got a friend who's a scientist, and the scientist is going to come meet us over here. Let's go over here and we'll meet this scientist. And everyone was like, oh, it's going to be Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four. And of course it wasn't going to be Reed Richards from Fantastic Four. They're doing a Fantastic Four movie. They're not going to release Fantastic Four characters in like episode 4 of a TV show. They're not there yet. So yeah, some really cool, building people's anticipation for like, oh, this must be interconnected. Oh, it's really not. Oh, there's going to be this character. Oh, it's really not. Like, they really did kind of toy with people a little bit through this stuff in a way that, some people found really frustrating. I've seen a lot of reviews and I've listened to some pods and stuff where people are like, oh, I hated this. And I thought for sure it was this, but it's not. And they're mad because they were wrong, but they're not, they're not mad because the show wasn't good. They're just mad because, oh, I thought for sure it was going to be this thing. And it's because there has been all these sort of somewhat predictable or, obviously lifted from the pages of comic storylines and stuff like that. People thought for sure they would know what was going to happen. And of course they were wrong. I thought it was really interesting that they decided to come at it that way and really, and again, like some of those episodes, the episode where Wanda is reliving her past. Agatha is trying to figure out sort of her real origin, right, and is walking her through her past and making her relive these horrible moments in her life and going through that. God, that was powerful. I mean, again, Lizzie Olsen, what a fantastic actress. I didn't know her from much outside of the Marvel Universe, but I'm really impressed with her having watched this series now. I mean, you can't ask for a better villain than we had in Agatha all along. I mean, she was so deliciously funny, and Catherine Hahn. I mean, she's long been one of my favorite actresses. She's played a lot of sort of character parts. It's so wonderful to see her get a real role like that with she could sink her teeth into. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really interesting way to come at a show like that. Very sort of unexpected, very sort of different take on that. But they used their 9 episodes in a way that you want to see that. They really maximized the character, and they really gave them a lot of meat. Like, I feel like I know Wanda better than I know almost every other character who hasn't been a lead character in a Marvel movie. I mean, obviously we know Tony Stark. He's had his own 3 movies, plus he was one of the stars of all the Avengers movies. We know Captain America and Thor. They've had their own movies. But those second tier characters, no one stands above Scarlet Witch at this point, because we've now spent so much time getting to know her and her pain, right, and her life, and all these different things that motivate her. And I think that's fantastic. Like, I really enjoyed that that deep dive into a character like that.
Now, do you want to go back and watch the other Avenger movies to see if there's any sort of hints towards where WandaVision comes from?
I honestly don't think there were. I honestly think some of this was about retconning this character a little bit, and I think some of it because again, when they did the character, like Wanda in the comic books was a mutant. They couldn't use mutants as part of their agreement because they had sold the right to the mutants and all mutant characters to Fox to produce movies. So they turned her into something else. Now they own the rights to the mutants again because they bought Fox. So now they can do whatever the hell they want. And I think that's what this was about, was like, you know what, let's get right into it. Let's make her whoever we want her to be now.
Right. And it was interesting, if you haven't watched the show yet, the sort of Easter egg outro cuts that they put in there too. Like, you know, as the show ended, it kind of went into this sort of, it's almost like you're looking at it as on a color TV, on like a cathode ray tube. But as you go into the TV, it starts to show other, like one time you go into Vision's death mask, you know, I think for its third or fourth episode or something like that. But and that was throwing people off the scent as well, right? Sort of the little teasers that they put at the end. Yeah,
and the commercials, the little commercials they were putting in that spoke to all these sort of like big picture things. And again, when you go back and watch that now, I think as a totality, I think it'll be really interesting to see how that comes together. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that it was the perfect show, but I certainly think it was a bold, and
it was better than a lot of shows.
Well, it was absolutely gutsy to do that as a show. It was absolutely bold and brazen to do, especially out of the gate for the first Marvel show. That was a real, like, look what we got right here. Drop it on the desk. This is some big stuff we're trying here. I think Jaime's absolutely right. I think, you know, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I know exactly what I'm going to get. Of course, they're going to get more into the characters. They're going to explore more of who those two characters are and their motivations and their traumas and all those other things that we expect. But it's also kind of a, you know, bang, bang, shoot, shoot, pew, pew kind of deal. Whereas this was really, you know, it was a character study. It was a 9-episode deep dive character study. And that, for a Marvel show, especially the first Marvel show, is ballsy as hell. And it worked.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely worth a watch.
Just a quick real-time follow-up. You were talking about the Marvel Studios Legends series that's on Disney Plus, the one where they did the little 7 minutes with Wanda, 7 minutes with Vision. Right. They have actually posted the first ones for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. So there's a 6-minute recap on Falcon, another one on Winter Soldier, one for Zemo, who is going to be on that show. He was the bad guy from Civil War, Captain America Civil War, and one for Sharon Carter, who was also in Captain America Winter Soldier. So they're bringing people up to speed on those 4 characters. Again, you can watch those little short encapsulations of their movie appearances, so you don't have to go back and watch all the Captain America movies and Avengers movies in order to find out where these characters have been.
Right, cool. All right. Well, the next thing we're going to talk about now is the Snyder Cut. But before we get into that, I want to get your ideas on this comment that I heard from somebody yesterday. So, co-host of More Than Just Code, Mark Rubin, and I were on Clubhouse yesterday. And Jonathan, we should talk about Clubhouse later. But because we have a MTJC group, we could probably roll some Spockcast love in there by hosting some events. But Mark was saying that a lot of his friends can't make it through the Snyder Cut. They just find it too bad is the word he used. I'm like, I couldn't believe that. Like, I mean, for me, it was like a completely different movie.
It was.
Than this. So we're talking about, obviously, Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut, which we've been looking forward to for months and months and months. I think Jonathan and Jaime more than me. But yeah, I mean, I sat down and started watching it, and it's 4 hours long, and I think I watched it in 3, if not 4 takings, right? Like, I watched the first hour one day, went to bed, digested, right? And then came back and watched it a bit more, and then took a break, and which is nice. I mean, if you're sitting in a theater for 4 hours, your butt would be hamburger, right? But yeah. So let's rip into it. What do you think?
I'm going to let Jaime take the first run at this one.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I do think it is overall a much better film than the 2017 release. It has, you know, you can see a lot that's similar, but it is, you know, I don't know what percentage to call it. It is very loosely the same film. If we call it that, it is, you know, more, it does more to fill out, you know, here's what everybody is doing. Here's what everybody's about. Here's why everybody matters in some way, shape, or form for the final battle. And I also like the fact that the cyborg character is not just there, right? Like he's actually pretty important in his relationship with his father is filled out a lot more. With that said, I do docket some points for some music selection in a few different places. I docket some points from the very ending, which really could have been maybe a couple post-credit scenes. I don't like where it ends. It feels kind of weird and shoehorned in. I see challenges for like, how could this practically have been a movie you would release in theaters? You'd either have to trim it down to 3.5 hours at a minimum to get like Lord of the Rings area of that, or do it like a night at the symphony or the opera where there's an intermission at the 2-hour mark, which actually works out pretty well given that there is a battle that like, okay, you could have ended the movie there and then had a part 2 movie, but it wouldn't have been as satisfying. But with all of that said, it is, in my opinion, a much better film, and I think a pretty good film, especially in comparison to the 2017 version. So I don't know what Mark's friends were getting at in terms of what they didn't like.
Maybe they're watching the 2017 movie. I don't know.
Well, okay. So it is I struggle with these terms. It's a better movie because that first movie sucked. It was quite frankly.
I'm waiting for Star Wars to be recut now.
Yeah. It really, it wouldn't have been hard to outdo that. So I think Snyder kind of was cheating on the curve already, right? Like that movie was generally kind of shot full of holes. It wasn't very good. And it didn't feel like a Zack Snyder movie, and it didn't feel like a Joss Whedon movie. I think the issue that most people would probably have with it is that DC and particularly Zack Snyder approach comic book storytelling in a very different way than Marvel does. Marvel, and it has everything to do with the way that those two companies view their characters. Marvel's characters have always been human. The whole root of the Marvel universe is this innate grounding in reality that makes the characters very identifiable. They have problems, they have relationships, they have traumas. Whereas DC's characters have long since passed, particularly because they are older characters, as in they've existed since the 1930s, and in some cases, they're very much about iconography. They're very much about, they're legends. They are these essentially godlike characters. And the way that that's manifested itself in the storytelling is so reflective. When you look at the movies, Zack Snyder is perfect for telling a DC Comics movie because he paints this beautiful visual canvas that is absolutely captivating. His movies are beautiful, but there's not a lot of grounding in there. There's not a lot of reasons to care about those characters. It's very much more about painting the most lush canvas you can using these iconic characters. Whereas the Marvel universe focuses very much on developing these characters and getting you to care about them and invest with them so that you feel that payoff. And I think that's actually trained a lot of comic book, particularly casual comic book movie viewing fans, so that the thing they like about the Marvel ones and the thing that they often don't like about the DC ones is they like that they can identify or see their lives or themselves or their friendships or whatever in the Marvel characters, whereas there's a certain elevation of the characters in DC. They are not real. They're these sort of iconic versions of humanity or iconic versions of people. They're not real. And I think that's very true in this movie too. Like, I enjoyed this version of the film, but I don't feel like I cared any more about the characters than I did going in, even though they spent way more time developing, especially as Jaime mentioned, the Cyborg character got a lot more play and development. The Flash character got that too. You know, we really got to spend more time with the characters than we did in the original one. And I think that's what makes it better by far than the Joss Whedon / Zack Snyder version that we got previously. But I'm not sure that this is for everybody. And I could see why people wouldn't necessarily like it. It's basically a moving painted comic book for 4 hours. Again, it's breathtaking. Zack Snyder is an absolute visionary. The way that he renders images on film is astonishing. It looks beautiful, but there's not a lot of there too.
Right, yeah.
So again, I could see why people wouldn't necessarily have the warm fuzzies, and I could certainly see why you get tired of it if you didn't care. I could see why you get tired of it after 4 hours of it, because I love this stuff, and I was still like, oh my God, this movie's still going.
Yeah, exactly. And then they throw another, like Jaime said, 20 minutes into it, right?
Yeah, and you know, I thought the main core of the movie definitely, you know, it did feel like kind of a mini series in and of itself. Like it, you know, they did break it into part 1, part 2, part 3. I think it was 6 parts and all in.
6 parts, yeah.
And then
an epilogue, so there was actually 7.
Well, that's it. And then they added in an epilogue and then a bonus scene after the epilogue, right? And there's just so much there to chew on and think about and digest. Like it's almost too much, you know. Like they originally had talked about doing it is in sequence, right? They were going to do like 2 parts one night and then more parts the next night. But when you sit down and I mean, obviously not everybody watched it at once. I didn't even watch it once. Xavier, my son, and I watched it over the course of a day. We took some breaks between the parts just because we wanted to, you know, go and refill our glasses and also just take a breather from everything that was happening. But I could see why people would be a little wiped out by it and not be able to get through it too.
Yeah, let's just throw a spoiler warning up here so we can dig in. So if you haven't seen the movie and you want to skip ahead, we'll put a marker on the show notes or in the stream chapter heading, and you can skip ahead because I do want to talk about some things that may spoil it for you. But so I mean, it's interesting that, you know, Batman, you don't see the Batman for at least half the movie, right? Mm-hmm. Like the first part of the movie is all Bruce Wayne.
A whole lot of Bruce, and very little Batman.
Other than the fact that you see Superman in the very beginning, he's not in the movie until like 2/3 of the way through.
Oh, maybe even more than that.
Yeah, I think because like I said, I watched the first hour one night, and it was like I started watching it like late at night, so there's no way I could have made it all the way through. And so I you know, turned it off and went away and came back the next day. I think it was Saturday morning, and I watched, you know, the next hour or so, and then I took a break, and then I watched the next hour or so, and then Superman showed up, right? And I mean, there were some interesting choices about the Superman that was different, you know, in this movie. And I mean, there was more, like you said, there was more rounding out of the characters, or at least getting you into them. And you know, Batman wasn't having much luck at the beginning trying to recruit people, which I think was in the original story too. But I mean, the original 2017 version. But overall, I thought it was a much better movie. I mean, like Zack Snyder did Watchmen too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very, very much in that sort of set. I mean, Watchmen was an amazingly creative movie for someone like me who's never read the comic book, because it was odd, because here, and just like the boys, right? Mm-hmm. Here are these characters which I know nothing about, right? You know, and being told this history as if I'm supposed to know the history, sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. I've been talking about the Watchmen, right? And in the same sense as this was too. I mean, I've been watching Superman since I was a kid, because I used to watch the George Reeve show on TV, and then I, you know, through all the Superman movies, and I watched Batman when I was a kid. By the way, when you were talking about crossing over characters, I totally forgot about it. One of my favorite episodes when I was a kid was when the Green Hornet was on
on the original Batman,
the original Batman show, right? And that was sort of they put the Green Hornet, and so basically Bruce Lee and the other guy who played the Green Hornet were on the show in order to sell the show, like kind of like they do crossovers now on the, you know, Supergirl, and you know, and of course also all the Avengers, which eventually came together for a reason, but. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like again, maybe I was spoiled. We should talk about the aspect ratio too.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so there was a huge argument online about the fact that it was a 4:3 aspect ratio, which meant you had the ugly gray bars on the side. But I immediately saw that as sort of the IMAX ratio, right?
Yeah.
And so I noticed that when I was watching the movie for the first 10 or 15 minutes or so, that whole and maybe it's because I grew up on TV, but that aspect ratio worked better for me for some reason. I guess I was more, you know, light was coming into my eyeballs or something, you know, because I remember watching the movie and then going, oh my God, this actually is better, you know, than having to pan left or right and like you do in other movies, right? I always find the letterbox a little cramped, you know, like I'm looking through a letterbox opening on a door. But so I found the aspect ratio good, and of course I just got a new HomePod, so I had that hooked up to the Apple TV, so I was listening to it with really, good bass. And so it was like being in a theater in a sense like that. And I liked the way the story arced. I mean, it was a lot longer than it could, the editor in me says, oh yeah, we could have cut this and we could have cut that, but I did enjoy the long sort of epic, thing. I'm glad it wasn't like one of these deals like the Harry Potter ones where you went and watched half the movie and then had to wait a half a year to watch the other half.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, but yeah, definitely you're gonna want to take a pee break and fill the glass up and get another bag of chips out, and like I said to Jaime before he watched it, pack a lunch because you're gonna need it, So yeah, overall I thought it was a much better. I don't mind Ben Affleck as Batman. I hate to say it, but because I mean, like George Clooney and Val Kilmer and even Michael Keaton, like we said earlier, like we've had all of them as. I didn't like Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Yeah, I just found I couldn't get past the face makeup, but I like the Wonder Woman character. She was a bit, she's still a bit odd. She's sort of an odd duck, doesn't sort of fit in, but the fact that they tied in the sort of it had a Lord of the Rings aspect to it with the the Age of Legends retelling, and that kind of stuff. The villain was really good. What's his name?
Steppenwolf.
No, the other guy.
Oh, Darkseid.
Yeah, I mean, do these people know how to spell check? Look out. But
Darkseid.
Well, I have the captions on, right? So every time they say his name, I'm going, that's Kenyan. I mean, the caption guy must have been going crazy too, right?
Hey, that's a Jack Kirby creation. Be nice.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But it was an interesting character, and when you look at some of the treatments, I mean, the special effects was much better in this in this movie. There were some questions like I had. Okay, somebody posted online, where does Aquaman get his shirts from?
Yeah, and also why does he keep just dropping them everywhere?
And when he drinks the whiskey and smashes it in, does it smash on the dock and go into the ocean, or does he just throw the bottle into the ocean? Like, would that not be something Aquaman would not do?
Well, but at that point, he's not as interconnected with Atlantis, so I think I think it's supposed to be part of the illustration that he doesn't care. I think it's supposed to be the rebel without a cause kind of deal at that point, where he doesn't care about the ocean, he doesn't care about Atlantis, he just sort of cares about what he cares about. I think that's sort of the message there. Although you're right, it's not a great look.
Yeah, it's like as if he lit up a smoke and started smoking, right? But
yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I did like the fact of the matter is they couldn't retell the Superman resurrection story any different. I mean, other than the fact that he walks past the blue uniform when he's picking his costume out, right? And like I remember the death of Superman because I remember you bringing it home, and I went, "What happened?"
Yeah,
I didn't read the book, but I remember the covers, and then I remember he came back a few months later.
In a shocking turn of events for a comic book character.
Yeah. That never happens.
Never.
Yeah. So I mean, from my perspective, I enjoyed it much more than pretty much any of the DC movies I've watched. I mean, Wonder Woman was good. I shouldn't say that because Wonder Woman has a nice look to it too, right? But yeah, I find the other ones a little too smashy, bang 'em, smash 'em, kind of. Even the 2017 which I watched a few weeks ago. This one I didn't really sort of mind the way that the epic battles were. The flying monkeys. I don't know about the flying monkeys though. I think they kind of cut those out.
The parademons, yeah. I almost said that at one point I was watching with Xavier. I almost said, "Fly, my pretties." Like it was just there was a real vibe there, but
yeah. And you had those epic, like I said, the Legends battles with the Amazons versus whatever, right? So
I will say regarding your Batman observations, I thought Xavier kind of nailed it, and it's funny because he has not read any Batman comics, but obviously we've spoken about the character a lot, and he's seen sort of the television incarnations and the movie incarnations. He made the observation in this one, for Batman, he uses a lot of guns, and one of the roots of the character in the comics is the fact that his parents died as a result of gun violence, and he abhors guns for that exact reason. He will not use guns. He will not use guns to kill people. He will not use guns in his stuff. And yet all the film incarnations of this character seem to be gun fanatic, which I don't know if that just speaks to, sorry, Jaime, the American ethos gross, but it's off-putting as a real fan of the character and somebody who's read, I mean, without exaggeration, thousands of Batman stories over the years. It is off-putting whenever I see that level of violence and gunplay related to that character.
Well, and also the humanity too. I know Christian Bale suffered a lot, but I think that the Ben Affleck, black and blue after every fight kind of thing where he's lying on the table and Alfred's helping him out. I like that human aspect of this Batman. I mean, superheroes are a bit too unbreakable. Well,
particularly the DC ones, right? That's exactly the same thing, right? They're these sort of paragons of perfection.
Right. Well, and it's like I was thinking about. I worry about poor Lois Lane in I think it's the second movie with Christopher Reeve where he decides to take her to bed. I always worry about her in that scene.
Well, that's the old joke from Mallrats, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe that's what it is. But I've always wondered about that. Like, yeah, exactly.
Something you said really, really hit me, and I want to circle back on it. You mentioned Watchmen, which is another Zack Snyder film, and I was thinking about other Zack Snyder films as I was watching this because obviously a lot of people know him from this and Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, because they are sort of that profile. The other three movies that really stand out for me when I think of Snyder's filmmaking are Watchmen. And previous to that, he did 300, the adaptation
300,
of the Frank Miller graphic novel. And he did a film called Sucker Punch in between those two.
Right.
And I think about all three of those movies, and I see a real trend in his filmmaking too. All three of those movies are beautiful. They are really, really visually interesting. Sucker Punch is a really underrated visual movie, but it is a horrible movie.
Yes.
It is not in any way good.
I don't think I made it through that.
It's not in any way good. It's, as a matter of fact, I'd say it's downright awful. But visually, if you try not to pay attention to the plot, the way that he portrays scenes, the way that he sort of builds these visual elements is unbelievable. And Watchmen's the same thing. I think people who are Watchmen book fans hate that movie because he crushes the humanity out of it and focuses on this sort of iconography of it. And in the same way that he continues into these DC movies, it really has no heart to it. And yet it's really interesting. It's really beautiful at points, but it makes no sense. And it's certainly in no way connected to the original work because it really is lacking the root in humanity. And I think that's what carries this one over too. As I was thinking about this movie, it's the same sort of pattern. If you follow those movies and you follow them into the DC movies that he's done most recently, is again, they look spectacular and his vision fits them really well, but his lack of resonance for the the innate humanity of these people, and again, you could argue some of them aren't humans, but it really is lacking, especially when contrasted, and it's inevitable and unavoidable when contrasted against the Marvel stuff. The Marvel stuff resonates because they have charm and wit and humanity, and they resonate in that way that it just becomes glaring on the opposite side.
Yeah, I think I am not the first person to say that. Like, Zack Snyder doesn't care about normal people. He loves the gods aspect of these characters, and possibly one of the best sort of metaphors for this I can think of from the movie itself is there's a wonderful, very touching, very human scene between Lois Lane and Martha Kent that we find out actually didn't happen because that was the Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
Right? That was not Martha Kent opening her heart to Lois Lane. That was somebody else, a god pretending to be somebody else, which is interesting.
Yeah. Well, do you think that was recut for this version? Because that scene is in the original, in the other movie, right? Where she tries to convince Lois to go back to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had in mind that character. It had been rumored for a long time that character was the Martian Manhunter, but not necessarily. Oh no, that the general, the one he had appeared in previous movies, and there was a lot of speculation that he was going to be the Martian Manhunter that carried out. One thing I wanted to circle back on, I really like to get both of your opinions on, is the epilogue, the two scenes, because
I was a couple of things I was going to say about that, just as an interesting point of fact, because I do have a link here for that part, but that scene, that section of the movie was actually all filmed during the pandemic, because they went back and recut that, and that's when we mentioned that Ben Affleck was going to come back and reprise his role, even though he'd been cut as Batman.
He quit, right?
Sorry?
He quit. He quit as Batman.
Oh, did he quit? Oh, okay.
He quit.
Yeah, he came back, and and actually, apparently Zack Snyder took a while to get the Joker, who was played by
Jared Leto,
to come back. It took some convincing for that too. Eventually, he wore him down. But apparently, none of those actors were actually in the same room at the same time. They were all filmed separately.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did like that piece because I really like the Batman outfit in that world. But apparently, it's a different world because in this one, it's kind of like you said, what do you call it, the multiverse, right? I didn't know that DC had a multiverse. I thought they were too straight for that. But this is supposed to be a different battle, and Batman and the Joker and Cyborg and who's the guy who's going to come and kill in the cutscene at the end? Deathstroke, yeah. They're on the same side, and Superman shows up and he's like ready to take them on, sort of thing. So, which is interesting because when Superman comes back, he still seems to harbor. He comes out when he's brought back in both movies, 2017 and here, he fights everybody because he's what the heck's going on here, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and it's not till he sees Lois that grounds him, right? Lois is the key,
right.
Yeah, it's funny because this movie was originally intended to be obviously the first of many more DC spin-off films. The movies that were supposed to come out of this were a new Batman movie starring Affleck. There was supposed to be more Justice League movies. This movie came out before Aquaman, so it was setting the stage for the Aquaman a little bit. And they telegraphed a future for Wonder Woman as well, because she obviously at the end she's standing there looking out towards the ocean, thinking about the fact that she has to go back to Themyscira at some point. I don't know. It's very interesting the way that they sort of approach this, like the sort of post-apocalyptic vision stuff that they did. The scene with Batman and the Joker and Deathstroke and Cyborg, that is very reminiscent of the Injustice video games, which have also been done as comic books, where the premise is that Lois Lane is killed and Darkseid comes to Earth. Lois Lane is killed, and then Superman is subjugated by Darkseid, and then everyone has to work to stop him, stop Superman, stop Darkseid, the whole thing. That's the premise of the Injustice video games. That's the of the storyline that they've carried into the comics for that series as well. So it's sort of an alternate universe. And then that was supposed to tie into the Flash, because the Flash establishes in this movie that he can travel through time, and part of that is supposed to be that it's supposed to be sort of the Flashpoint idea that the Flash could travel back in time and undo this future, right? So there's a lot of stuff to chew on there, and especially I know all this stuff because I'm hip deep in this universe and all these different iterations of it, but there's a lot of stuff to chew on for people who came into this. They might have made it to the end of and we defeated Steppenwolf and we send him back, and then they get into this scene, you're like, what is happening here? And it's not like it's like, you're right, it's not like it's a cut scene in the credits where it lasts for 2 minutes, or it's like 15 minutes long. They really are sort of setting the stage for this is what was gonna happen, right? Because they do the scene with Lex Luthor and Deathstroke, and Luthor reveals Bruce Wayne's identity to Deathstroke, and that was supposed to set up the Deathstroke versus Batman next Batman movie. And then there's this whole Injustice thing that was supposed to set up another movie there, and then there's the other epilogue scene where Martian Manhunter shows up at the doorstep of Bruce Wayne's not mansion and says hey, I'm here to help, I'm going to be part of the team, everything else. And so they open all these doors to all these potential things. I'm not sure, I guess the idea is they wanted to let Zack finish his vision of exactly how he was going to finish this, but this movie came out last, was it Thursday in our time, a week ago-ish, and within a few days DC and Warner Brothers were like, Zack's done, we're not going to do any more of these movies, we've this, as far as we're concerned, this is the end. He says chances are I'm not going to do any more. So they basically reopen all these old wounds of well, this is where we were going with all this stuff, but we've decided since then we're going completely different directions. So you're it becomes almost very unsatisfying satisfying in the end to get to the end of this 4-hour odyssey and be like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. None of it matters.
Right. Well, I mean, but it could be like the whole, I keep thinking of George Lucas with this whole, recut, right? Because he talks like he named the movie Episode 4, right? Mm-hmm. And so you immediately think, well, what about 1, 2, and 3, right? Where are they, right? And it's kind of like Star Wars was, as I understand Star Wars, it was like they found this film reel and put it in the theater and showed it, and it was actually the 4th episode of whatever, right? So that kind of leaves Lucas with the opportunity to do the first 4 movies, and of course he's always claimed that there were 6 of them to come with, and now he claims there was 9. I mean, he's probably up to 12 or 15 by now. But it's almost like these are teasers put out there that he's kind of put these pieces in place, and it gives the producers, whoever owns DC, to the license to come out with something that carries on those stories, right? So, because I'm into I'd be interested to see that sort of retro, otherworld Batman and Joker being buddy, lethal weapon kind of. That
was an interesting scene because they're like working together, but
hating each other's
guts clearly, and obviously referencing some very dark materials in there, and they established that in the previous in the Batman v Superman movie that we see Robin's costume, and there's an allusion to the fact that the Joker actually killed Robin,
right.
And then there's
that Batman let him die or somehow, or
failed him somehow, and then there's also, he makes a direct reference to Harley Quinn from the Suicide Squad and the fact that she died horribly too, and so there's all these sort of like dark, twisted things going on there. They call it the nightmare sequence with a K, nightmare.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's just weird. It became kind of a weird.
That's right. Yeah, it was a dream. He wakes up in a dream.
Yeah,
he was dreaming that. Mm-hmm. But he does mention earlier in the movie that he had a dream vision of something that happened earlier in the movie. I forget what it was, but he mentioned to one of the characters that he dreamt this sort of sequence.
Well, I think he has a similar dream in Batman v Superman, right?
Or does he? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mm. But yeah, I think it's just weird. It's weird. I appreciate that they wanted to give Zach his complete vision of I wanted to tell the story this way, and this is what I would have done, and so I'm going to do it this way. But it becomes kind of vaguely unsatisfying in the end, where you're like, oh, so they've sort of put all these cards on the table and then quickly said, well, but that's the end of it. So I'm not sure how to feel about this in the end. I've gotten to see the vision of what Zack Snyder wanted to do with the DC universe in 2017, but since we're now in 2021, right, none of this is going to come to pass. The only thing that's coming out of this still that's on the slate from DC is a Flash movie. And the rumor is that Flash movie is going to still be Flashpoint, which is a time travel story that's going to involve different iterations of the Batman and some different stuff there. But that's it. Everything else is sort of off the table at this point.
So I heard too that Zack Snyder didn't want to refused to get paid while he did this.
He refused to get paid?
Yeah, he took percentages in order so that they would leave him alone to build this the way he wanted to. So
what do they give him? They give him percentages of people who subscribe to HBO Max? How does that work?
I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if they do it based on analytics tracking or something.
Yeah.
Well, and apparently he's not seen the 2017 cut.
Well, how could you?
His wife and his friend said, "Don't watch it. You'll just cry."
Well, I mean, having seen both versions, there's whole tangents in that other movie where you're like, what? Who thought this was? I know who thought this was a good idea, but why? Yeah.
So do you want to play this game? So I found an article that talks about 45 of the biggest differences between the two movies.
Yeah.
Did they cheat and 37 of them are related to the Russian family somehow? You remove their entire plot line?
Their entire who cares plot line?
You got one. That's exactly that. That is one of the differences for sure.
Yeah.
The Russian families go. We talked about the fact that Batman doesn't appear until much later.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to worry about erasing Superman's mustache.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. The first part, which we talked about with Superman and Aquaman's first sort of scenes together, is much longer in this one.
Oh, Batman, you mean?
Yeah, Batman.
Batman and Aquaman. It's a much longer scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the women singing as
Aquaman floats out to sea, they all sing a little song, and
they pick up his laundry, do his laundry for him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's supposed to be Icelandic or Norwegian or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he was
Joss Whedon.
in Iceland.
Joss Whedon no longer has a screenwriting credit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, Jaime, what you're saying?
I think they were in Iceland, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it a difference for Steppenwolf? I could swear that he didn't really have a purpose in the first movie, like a motivation other than I'm evil, I got to collect the boxes, take over this world. Whereas in this one, he has a motivation of I'm doing those things, yes, because I want to kiss up and reclaim my place because I've been, fallen out of grace for Darkseid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different. He's also been rendered differently in this movie. Right?
They did a much better job with him. He kind of looked like a video game character in the first one. This one felt like they put some spit and polish on him.
Yeah. Let's see what else is there. He spent. So Bruce Wayne spends more time outside of the Batcave.
Yeah, there's the whole introduction of Cyborg and the whole introduction of the Flash are completely different. Including that,
yes, exactly,
kind of questionable scene with the Flash where they kind of introduced that he's both somewhat responsible for and then also responsible for saving a young woman who apparently is going to also be in the new Flash movie. That's Iris West.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Zack Snyder has a cameo in the movie.
Oh, in which scene?
The scene where Lois is coming out of the coffee shop.
Oh, you know what I noticed in this one? The guy who played the cop that she kept interacting with, the guy she kept bringing coffee, that's the guy who plays Jimmy Olsen in the original Christopher Reeve 19...
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Movie. Yeah, as soon as I saw him, I'm like, I know that dude.
Right. Oh, let's see what else. The Wonder Woman introduction is more inspiring when she says to the girl, "You can do anything you want."
Yeah, that was pretty damn cheesy.
Not if you're a girl.
I appreciate the concept. Well, you can be the token woman in a team full of men any day.
Was Wonder Woman's sequence at the bank, was that different? Like, I don't really remember her unnecessarily destroying
it was way darker.
The guy.
Way darker in this version.
Okay, because I don't remember him just getting blasted, including the wall in the other version.
Yeah, no, that scene is longer and it's certainly more built out, and it's way more violent. Like when she grabs that first guy and throws him against the wall, and the brain smear comes down the wall. I was like, oh, okay, we're going somewhere else with this now.
Right. The battle between Steppenwolf and the Amazons is for the Mother Box is much longer.
Yes.
The cards. The fact that there are cards in this movie is that there weren't cards in the other one. Yeah. Right.
Wonder Woman's theme is different. They play it more like a chant than the cellos.
Yeah.
I will say though, coming out of this, obviously, Ray Fisher as Cyborg gets a lot more play, and he's good. And I thought he was quite good. I could see why he was particularly PO'd about his portrayal from one movie to the next. Like if he was sold on like, you'll be in this movie, you're going to be basically the heart of it as much as there is, to what he ended up with, I could see why he was as mad as he was. But I came out of it again. I liked Gal Gadot. I thought she was really good. She has a natural confidence in every scene she's in. She doesn't shrink from the other sort of godlike characters. And again, she's playing opposite, some pretty heavy hitting actors too at times, and she commands the screen at times. She's really quite good.
Yeah,
certainly liked it better than Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, they explained to her how she knows about the mother boxes with the arrow and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. I'm just whipping through this list here. Icky Thump song is gone from the.
They took the white stripes out. Yeah,
Aquaman thing.
Yeah.
William Dafoe as
Vulko. Yeah. Although again, that's weird too, because they had teed up the Aquaman movie with some of that stuff, and then when you watch the Aquaman movie, he doesn't know Mera, he doesn't know Vulko, like all that stuff is completely different. Yeah. So it's confusing in that way too.
Robin Wright's back as Antiope.
Yeah, very briefly. Yeah.
Darkseid is now a bigger character.
Yep, and Desaad's there. Granny Goodness is there. The Harry Lennox Martian Manhunter character is in there.
Yeah,
I do think that I miss hearing Lex Luthor say, "Isn't it time we had a league of our own?" So that Deathstroke interaction is different.
It is. That whole scene. He doesn't do the Batman Bruce Wayne reveal in the Joss Whedon cut.
Right, and actually when they tell him to come out of his cell, it's actually the actor, not a substitute, I think. Right. You Are Not Alone poster is seen in one scene. I'm not sure what the reference is. Are you familiar with that?
Well, I don't know. That doesn't ring a bell.
Oh.
It just has significant meaning to fans of the Snyders. Well, I guess you're not real fans of the Snyders.
I'll have to wear that cross, I guess.
I mean, the movie doesn't start with the Superman cell phone video, right? I mean, that's a big difference. Or did that get put under the no mustache thing? Again, I'm unclear how they bucketed these. So
the scene where Cyborg meets Wonder Woman is different.
Yeah, and they got rid of some of the quippy, clearly Joss Whedon influenced stuff. The part where I think it's Aquaman is like sitting on Wonder Woman's lasso and starts just spewing the truth at one point. That's in the original cut. That's not in Zack Snyder's version.
Yeah, the drawing of the flying monkeys. People think it's Batman at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, they removed the whole piece about the parademons and the like car alarm sounds, which ends up not getting used in Batman's magical mystery tour as he's shooting up all the different buildings and stuff, right? Causing chaos in the final battle.
Oh, can we just briefly talk about the stupid goggles they put on Batman for that whole final sequence? My God, that's so stupid. What a stupid look. After the
bat goggles.
Oh my God. Like, it honestly, it felt like, let's do something campy. Like, that was so bad.
Yeah, I mean, the resurrection of Superman is different too, in that they like say at the very last second, oh no, we shouldn't do this. And Flash makes time go backwards so that you can time it correctly for the jump start.
But I think in the original movie, isn't it like this one, they all agreed to do it, or they all agreed to do it together, right? Or it's done separately before?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was a little different, I think. But I've pressed for what the actual differences are, it'd be hard to tell.
Yeah, I went to take a look right before this movie was released on Crave here in Canada. I thought, maybe Xavier's right. Maybe we should watch the other one just so we're sort of refresh our memories of its excellence. And I took a look, and it's not available on any streaming services that I subscribe to. And so the only way to get it was to either rent it or purchase it from the iTunes store. And Xavier said, well, we could do that. I'm like, but then we'd be willingly paying money for that.
For what?
To own or rent a copy of Joss Whedon's Justice League. It's like, I'm not sure in good conscience I can do that, son.
Yeah, I PVR'd it. That's how I watched it.
Yeah.
Right? So, because it was shown on Space a couple of weeks ago. There's a new character, Ryan Choi, Star Labs guy.
That was the other thing that they teed up. Ryan Choi is, in the comics, he's one of the characters who goes by the name The Atom.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And they make a reference, especially in the final scene, that his specialty is nanotechnology. So obviously sort of foreshadowing that if they continued this path of the DC cinematic universe, that he would be the Atom.
Yep. Superman doesn't ask Batman if he bleeds.
True. True. I also don't remember Miles Dyson dying in the Joss Whedon version.
No, I think they didn't do that part.
Yeah, he dies to protect
he basically superheats the mother box so that they can track it to where it is in Chernobyl.
Exactly. Yeah. Lois Lane no longer tells Superman he smells good.
Wait, what? I don't remember that one. That really happens
in the 2017 movie. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh man.
Wow. I don't remember.
The Russian family's gone, which Jaime got. Yeah. They have the scene, the sort of the freeze scene where you see the 5 people in the Justice League sort of together in the one shot.
Oh, you mean the exact scene that they did from the Avengers? Yes.
Yeah, Batman's in the car. Cyborg no longer says "booyah."
Yeah, I know they took that one out because that was a reference to the Teen Titans cartoon, right? And that was clearly a Whedonism. They added that in. Again, all of for good or for ill, they took out almost all the humor. And I mean, I don't think it fits the milieu of a Zack Snyder movie, so I get why they took it out, but I'm not sure all of it was necessary to go just because it was a little bit humorless.
Yeah. The sign on Arkham says for the emotionally troubled, no longer for the insane.
Criminally insane,
yeah. I mean, we get to see Batman and Joker together.
Arguably a big difference is that prior to Flash going backwards in time, the heroes lose, right? Because like in the 2017 version, Superman comes in, whoops up on Steppenwolf while nobody else needs to do anything, randomly decides, hey, I hear people who are going to die potentially, let me go save them, instead of stopping the more urgent villain to give the rest of Justice League something to do. And this one, he comes in, he kicks butt, they still lose, right? And it's only Flash going back to change some of that timing that says, okay, now they can all participate and just like completely overkill Steppenwolf. Right?
Yeah. I feel like we kind of tapped out on Justice League. I don't know what else I have to say about it. It's
Yeah,
probably
I think-
worth a watch. If you're a DC fan, you'll probably get more out of it. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, it for me as being an HBO Max subscriber and also getting Godzilla vs. Kong, this movie is effectively free for me, right? Like I watched it, I enjoyed it more than 2017. I'm not going to watch the black and white version because I don't want to watch 4 hours again just to see it with a different tinting. It is a little weird to have the 4:3 IMAX thing, knowing that it is literally not being going to be displayed in IMAX. So I'm like, all right, I can deal with that. I'd say folks should check it out if they liked the other Justice League movie even at all.
What do you think for a broad, for a sort of as a movie on its own, do you think it holds up as that? That's where I really struggle with it. I think I'm into it because I'm into it. I'm into the characters. I'm into the iconography, and I like Zack Snyder's filmmaking style to a certain extent. But as a movie, I don't think it's particularly good. I don't think it's a good narrative. I don't think the plot makes a lot of sense, and there's certainly not enough character development for me to care very much about the characters. So I think as a movie, it's kind of a failure. I think as a sort of a complete vision, it's an interesting experience, but I don't think it's a great movie.
Yeah, I do think, coming back to Snyder not caring about the average person, I think when you think about the traditional difference between Superman and Batman has been, Clark Kent is the real person and Superman is the secret identity, and Batman is the real identity and Bruce Wayne is the secret identity. I feel like Snyder definitely leans to no, both of those. Both of those, the actual superhero part is the one who matters, and that's where it is different, and maybe a good jumping point to roll over into the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that we talked about the Marvel stuff being sort of generally different. I think some of it is sort of necessarily so, right? Like the DC characters are so iconic that I could just go ask random people of any age, here's a picture, who is this? And they'll be like, oh, that's Wonder Woman. Oh, that's Superman. That's Batman. Marvel, by and large, doesn't have those. Like, yes, they do have some stars.
Well,
like
the Spider-Man, you can make the case for, Spider-Man. There's some Wolverine, Spider-Man.
There's some, but Marvel didn't own those, right? Like, they didn't have the rights to like Sony had those, right? And like, even as popular as like Wolverine is, like, I would not be able to show random grandparents on the street. Yeah. Who is this? I don't know. Maybe they saw the more recent ones, right? So I think they sort of necessarily had to take the tactic of, okay, our source material does tend to deal more with the human side of things versus the godlike side of things as DC does. And for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we do see more like what is the real world impact of these people's lives, right? Like the Falcon has come back. It's 5 years later. His family life is messed up, right? Things got messy in his absence. The Winter Soldier, Bucky, has come back and he is messed up from the things that he did when he was the Winter Soldier. And he's dealing with that guilt. None of which, again, is very different from Justice League, where like they just do not get into those human aspects. It's about how do the gods fight. In this case, even though there is action and it does serve the story, and some of it is pretty cool, like the first sequence with the Falcon, and then the desert canyon is great. But it's still like the heart is these broken people who are struggling to reintegrate into society, even though they are like Instagram stars. Like people want to take photos with them. Yeah,
it really does. I think it comes back to what I mentioned before. I think the root of the Marvel universe has always been way more grounded, and it is in these characters being people as well as being heroes. Whereas I think the DC strength has always been that these are these godlike characters, these icons. And I think this one very much starts off with, you're right, like the scene with Sam flying through the desert and trying to stop the plane from getting away, and the helicopters and the squirrel suits, and again, great action, beautiful scene, probably more money spent on that than any TV show to date, other than maybe Game of Thrones. Really cool stuff. However, you're right, the heart of it is his relationship with his sister. It's his relationship with Steve, even though Steve isn't in the show, his relationship with, being a hero. Like it's so emotional and nuanced in a very affecting way that it really does speak to sort of chasm between the way they portray their characters.
Yeah. And I think very similar to how loss and grief are the big themes for several of the characters in WandaVision, I'm getting the impression here that legacy is the big theme here, where Bucky, the Winter Soldier, wants to get past the legacy, the negative legacy that he has, and the Falcon is unsure about taking on a legacy that he feels he is not worthy of. Right, referencing Steve, and then to, I guess, semi spoilers for Tim here, and then to see that legacy by the government thrown back sort of in his face of like, they went ahead and gave it to another guy. Is like, wait, what?
And not just another guy, another white guy. Like, I think that's going to be really the thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing them how far Marvel will push into some of this stuff. I thought the stuff that they did with him and his sister trying to get the loan, where the guy is like, hey, I really want to take a selfie with you and all this stuff, but then he also won't extend him the loan. And, obviously there's racial overtones to some of that. And then I'm really curious to see how far they go, particularly in the next episode, about getting into, the role that race may play in him being or not being Captain America, and the perception and all that stuff too. I think this could be a really ballsy play by Marvel if they go down that road. Yeah. Speaking of grounding things in reality, like, what's more real than talking about race in America?
Yeah, it's a very timely topic for this. I don't know. I was pretty excited by what I saw. It's kind of interesting that folks who are watching this and WandaVision week by week felt like they were a little bit of a slow burn, and I just don't feel it that way. I feel like, look, it would be way too slow. Like, if you'd gone an hour into this 2-hour movie and this is as far as you got, probably not fast enough. But given that it is a limited series, I think you can take some time to set things up. Not indefinite time, and I do think there's probably a very good reason why they had the very exciting action sequences pretty early on in this one. But I kind of like the slower pace of, let's work our way into this. Let's set the context. What are the ground rules that these characters are dealing with? I don't know. I thought it was cool. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, I really liked, and something I think we've talked about in the past on this show is the real refutation of the we drop all the episodes at once culture, the devour the episodes. Stranger Things is here. We're dropping 14 episodes and they're all going to land on you at once. And the conversation about it's going to be hot and heavy, but it's only going to last like a week. Going back to that original model, that sort of traditional TV model of week after week, subsequent weeks, but not as far back as, episodic television where, and they take a hiatus here and they take a break there, but actually being like back to week after week is so much, I think, more enjoyable. As much as obviously there is this part of me that's like, oh, I'd love to be able to just sit and devour this because it's really good. I like having it parsed out where I can think about what's happened and I can really, start to strategize. Now, that may have backfired a little bit with WandaVision, where people were going way too far with their speculation. But I think it's really healthy in the same way it was for Game of Thrones, in the same way that it was for The Mandalorian. I think it's really healthy to have that little bit of a break where you can really digest and appreciate the episodes in a healthier way, in WandaVision for sure. Whereas, I do find that those big sort of Netflix-esque drops of episodes in one big go, it's really hard to have those things. How many times have you and I and Tim gotten into those conversations where we're really struggling with, oh, I'm on episode 5. Oh, I've already finished the whole thing. Oh, you got to finish this. And oh, we got to talk about that. And then you never really tend to get aligned with your friends. You don't have that shared experience of, oh, we all watched it. Oh, we could talk about it. It really does change the enjoyment for me in that way, and I think I enjoy it more this way.
Yeah, definitely. You can sort of digest a bit more, like you were saying. And it seems to me only like, because Amazon's doing it now they did it with Heroes, and they're doing it with more shows
and
now,
The Boys,
right? And a few other ones that I've watched too. They've done the same thing, and then Disney's doing it for sure, and so is Apple, right? So it's much better, much more enjoyable. Some things you want to just get through, and that works okay, but yeah, like I find it very disappointing. Like you said, you can't go to work and talk to your friends. You have to avoid Twitter or whatever,
Yeah, and it does really build the hype too. Like, it's way easier to sort of build the momentum on some of these things, I think, because you are.
I just wish they wouldn't show them all on Friday afternoon, though. Right?
Well, basically they go up at midnight Pacific time, and then wherever you are, it sort of translates from there. So I have friends who stay up until 3 3 in the morning on Thursday nights or early Friday mornings and watch it as soon as it comes out.
Well, you mean like from other channels? Because I mean, Apple.
No, this is the Disney Plus, the Mandalorian, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They're all going up.
Because Apple stuff comes out at 5 in the afternoon, right?
Yeah, these are going up at 3 a.m. Eastern time or midnight on the West Coast.
So Thursday night, sort of.
Thursday night, yeah. So some people are staying up and watching it at that point.
3 a.m. Right? Okay,
yeah. If you want to watch it in our neck of the woods, yeah, you got to stay up till 3 in the morning to watch it. And the WandaVision episodes were a little shorter. The duration of the show is the same, but the episode lengths are shorter. So you got a half an hour. So you got to stay up till 3:30 in the morning or 3:40 in the morning to watch a WandaVision episode. You got the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is less episodes, longer run times. So you got to stay up till 4 almost if you want to stay up and watch those. And that's assuming that all of your friends are doing the same thing, so that you can gather around the virtual water cooler or the Zoom meeting and have a conversation about it the next day. So
the last thing I wanted to say about the drop all episodes at once versus tease them out. I think the teasing them out to expound upon what Jonathan had said works for these shorter seasons, and we're talking like series that are 13 episodes or fewer. I think that works because it's not like, oh man, I have to be in here for 26 episodes, for like normal people television that you would see on the air for like ABC, CBS, Fox, etc. And it's a short enough time that it doesn't feel like it's dragging on. And I think it has a benefit in that if you're somebody who, for whatever reason, missed the beginning parts, you could reasonably catch up and enjoy the week by week hype. Like, for example, I did not see the first season of The Mandalorian, and I did not see like 3/4 of The Mandalorian as it was live. And I was able to binge through that, granted with some concerted effort because it was almost 2 full seasons at the point, but it was still possible to binge, to catch up to real time and then enjoy things going forward with the rest of the fandom. And I think that's plausible here too, right? So Tim, you missed the first episode of The Falcon and Winter Soldier. Well, no biggie. You can tomorrow watch 2 episodes. Right. You could wait like 3 more weeks and be like, whatever, I'll binge, and then I'll watch the final 2 episodes with everybody else. It gives you that option of all you can eat, and also being able to partake in the what does this mean? Did that little hand signal mean that like Mephisto's coming in to the to this one, or what's going on, right? Like you can participate without it being like compared to Stranger Things, which is great that it drops all at once, but it is a little intimidating to be like, I got to finish this weekend, otherwise come Monday morning I will have to tell people, hey, spoiler alert, I'm only on episode 8, I still need 2 more episodes to go.
Yeah, and on the other hand, National Geographic Channel is showing Genius, which is a great show. The first season was on Einstein, second season was on Picasso, this season is on Aretha Franklin, and they showed 2 episodes on Sunday night, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll set my PVR to record the series on Sunday nights, right? But then I didn't know that they were showing them in 4 consecutive nights. So all 8 episodes have gone by now, and I've missed them. I watched the first 2. So, and of course now they say, you can stream it, whatever, but it's not online anywhere yet. Even if you go to buy it from Apple, they're only selling the first 2 episodes. Well, yeah, really annoying. But it's the reverse of, like, that's network television that's messing up, my life. Anyway, let's move on to a watch list, shall we? So I'll go up first because mine's brief. It's a new show called Bliss. I think it might be out already on Amazon Prime, starring Owen Wilson and Thelma Hayek. And it's sort of a take on Matrix-y kind of stuff. It's sort of a dream. This guy's in a dream, and she kind of snaps him out of it. And I have a feeling it's going to be which is the real reality kind of TV show. But yeah, interesting looking sci-fi adventure issue thing. So probably similar to that Palm Springs movie.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So that's mine. Cool. You're up, Jaime.
Yeah, I've got my Justice League bonanza here. I've got Honest Trailers take on Justice League, the Snyder Cut. And if you wanted a longer and different take on this same topic, there is Zack Snyder's Justice League pitch meeting from folks that do pitch meeting on YouTube. So worth a watch, especially if you like some of the cutting, skewering kind of analysis for this type of event movie. And my other watch list item is, by the time this episode goes out, and certainly before the next one is going to be recorded. Check out Godzilla vs. Kong, coming out on March 31st on HBO Max. No idea in your native territories, Crave or similar,
Right.
I think I heard. But,
Godzilla vs. Kong here is premium VOD only. So you cannot get it on Crave. So you will have to pay $30 if you wish to watch it.
Or not.
Or not.
And who's the providers there? Is it like Canada.gov or like I'm unclear what premium video on demand is. Like it doesn't sound like a service. It sounds like on iTunes or Amazon.
I believe it means you can get it through Cineplex, which is our major movie chain up here. We'll probably have it. Apple will probably have it. But yeah, you won't.
Google Play will have it.
Yeah, Google will have it. You won't, but you won't. You'll have to get it through a non-licensed or a non-affiliated organization. It's not like it's on a channel you can watch.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, sticking it to the Canadians.
At least we have the vaccine. Anyway, carry on, John.
Top of my list is a show that's actually premiering tonight or first thing tomorrow, depending on your perspective. It's Invincible, the cartoon adaptation of the Image Comics series by Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman, co-created this series as well. And it's one of my favorite comics from the last 20 years. There haven't been a lot of, I would say, series that have really captured my imagination, comic hero type stories that have really captured my imagination over the last number of years. Usually it's people recycling a lot of characters or telling new takes on old characters. This is a sort of a whole new thing. So the idea is that Mark Grayson is a young man whose father is the greatest hero on Earth, Omni-Man. And he is hopeful that someday he will also develop powers, but so far he's a teenager and he has no abilities. And as the story sort of breaks, he starts to develop his powers, and it's about sort of, learning at his father's side and his sort of coming of age story with a lot of wrinkles along the way. It is in the comic. It's a pretty real. There's it's kind of hyper violent at times. It really does kind of follow the Peter Parker mold of, would you do the right thing no matter what, the consequences, how far would you go to right wrongs, as you're learning to become a person in your teens and stuff like that. It's not quite with great power comes great responsibility, but there's certainly some elements of that. And it is a fantastic comic book story that has been told beginning, middle, and end. And I'm really curious to see how that adapts to an animated thing. Stephen Wen, or Yun, I can't recall how he pronounced his last name, from The Walking Dead, is the lead. He plays Mark. It is an all-star cast. Seth Rogen. There's just an amazing cast list for the show, playing all these different parts. It's really epic, so I hope it continues for a long time. It really, the story of Mark and his life and where his stories take him is really grand, very, very visionary. If you're a fan of the concept of The Walking Dead, if not the execution, Kirkman is really good at sort of taking a look at, not just the decisions you make, but how you live with those decisions. That's what The Walking Dead was at its root, and that's what this show is at its root. And I'm really excited to see what comes of this one.
Cool.
The other thing I tagged in here was just a funny one, and I had to share it with you guys. I don't know that I'm actually going to see this, although maybe. So I'm still feeling stung and hurt by the cancellation of the Dark Crystal television series on Netflix. I thought it was brilliant and visionary and incredible, and I waited so long to see more of that world, and I'm still gutted that they didn't do a second season or more of that. But the good folks at the Royal Opera House in London, let's say, they are putting on a Dark Crystal ballet.
Okay.
The Dark Crystal Odyssey, a new dance work for family audiences, is coming to the Royal Opera House in the future. It sounds like the craziest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, it's the Royal Opera House in England. I'm just fascinated at the concept of somebody taking this incredibly vivid work and turning it into a ballet. And I'm not a ballet fan in spite of my upbringing, and I must admit I'm absolutely intrigued to know how they would do that.
You know, this is one of the rare times at which my, as a very young child, getting an opportunity to see Ewoks on ice comes into play. It's one of the rare times that this trivia of my life.
No wonder you're scarred about hockey. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ewoks
Walter
and the
Gretzky,
Magic
that's who also
Sunberries.
died. We forgot to mention Walter Gretzky.
Oh,
Go ahead, sorry.
So the Ewoks and the Magic Sunberries is apparently the official title, but there was this whole ice-capades thing. So basically, characters that children like, performing what's essentially like a play, kind of ballet style, to be quite honest, right? It's very similar, but on sheets of ice, right? I assume they repurpose hockey rinks or something. And this particular one, Ewoks on Ice, is based on the Ewoks animated series. So as
love it.
strange as it seems, I could 100% see the Dark Crystal as a ballet.
Apparently, they are having. I'm just looking at one of the articles written about it. They say it is going to involve puppets and props from Jim Henson's Creature Shop. So it is going to be a hell of a thing, and it is coming in the 2021-2022 season at London's Royal Opera House.
If they have ballet.
Well, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. But I gotta admit, I'm a little fascinated. I think we should.
Would you fly to London for it? Or?
I don't know that I would fly to London for it, but I would hope that at some point we start to see leaks of the costumes and perhaps some of the stuff online.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that I would go that far. Could be one of those mother son trips. I happen to know a really popular big ballet fan, so
yeah, for sure.
Very weird, but very interesting.
All right. Well, guess what? That's it for another episode, folks. So, Jaime, if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
And Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News.
And as usual, I am Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA. On the Twitter machine is where you'll find me. Until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spockcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Think about this. Okay, so as nutty as it sounds, take a look at the second photo here of. Now imagine, I don't know how good you are. I know Canadians are born of the snow, right? And they just emerge fully formed from the ice. But I don't know that your ice skating skills would be so good that you'd be willing to strap on that sort of costume with limited visibility, like you're on The Masked Singer.
Oh, yeah, constantly. Totally.
Skate around.
We're raised like that, dude. Are you kidding?
Skate
That's
around.
That's how our
completely
parents
obscured.
dress us for our first skating trips. They going out to the pond, put on your Ewok costume.
Yeah. So we have Sesame Street on ice. And
Oh yeah,
all ice capades and all kinds.
well, and
of
there's a
things
whole
like that.
whole Disney thing through there too. All the Disney characters, they would do Disney shows and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they've done a whole bunch, but all swill before the might that is Ewoks on ice.
Were you actually a fan of that show, or was it just something that happened during your childhood?
I was a fan of the show, but I have literally not seen it since probably around that time in my life. So I need to check to see if it's on Disney Plus and see if I'm just.
You know what? I think it was actually in that
offended.
same article. I think they said that it might be coming to Disney Plus as well.
I got to watch that because let me tell you, I've rewatched some old He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoons, and I was a huge fan. Again, probably around the same age as a child. I'm like, this is dumb. Why do kids like this? This is so dumb as an adult.
It's the Ewoks.
Yeah.
And the droids. I like the droid cartoons.
Yeah, actually, I just, since we were in a lockdown here for more than 3 months straight, we weren't allowed to go out for anything non-essential. So that happened since Christmas time straight through till about not even 2 weeks ago. So I hadn't seen one of my closest friends to be able to exchange Christmas presents. We finally went out. We took, when the lockdown lifted a couple weeks ago, I took one of my dogs down and we went for a walk, and he gave me my Christmas present. And my Christmas present is some original animation cells from the Ewoks cartoon.
Nice.
Hand-drawn original cells of a bunch of the characters, the princess and Logray and all these different things. It is a very, very cool gift.
Nice. Oh, Clubhouse, Jonathan.
Clubhouse.
Yes. So I don't know if what you know about it or what you've heard about it.
Oh, very little.
Okay, so it's basically it's like a panel at a conference. So what you do is you set up events, and you can either just have an impromptu conversation. Like yesterday, Jaime couldn't make it to taping of More Than Just Code, so Mark and I, who are both members with Jaime, we started an MTJC club, and we have like 70 followers or whatever. It's nice because as podcasters, we actually get to talk to our fans, right? And they get to talk to us, right? So we go on there, we make a list of like 5 or 6 topics, related to our podcast. Plus, we also talk about Clubhouse and pandemic and stuff. And what it is you basically you join a meeting, like a meeting. You can either sit in the audience and listen, and there's also a grouping of, if there's like 3 or 4 people on the stage, it also has a grouping of people who follow those people, like a sort of they set up like almost like a VIP area. And if people want to say something, they can raise their hand and you let them up on the stage, and so that they can interact with you. So it's like a way of meeting and greeting your fans, but also getting their interpretation of the Snyder Cut or what they remember about Ewoks on Ice or whatever. So like I said, you can have impromptu things, or we can plan to have like an event. Like we can say, hey, Saturday, meet the hosts of More Than Just Code, right? And we all jump on together, and away we go. And the way it works is, if people it's just like Twitter and that kind of stuff. You follow people, people follow you, and when you're online, they get a notification to say, hey, the Spockcast is online, or Tim and Jaime are having a conversation. You can also tweet out, like if you plan an event, you can tweet out about the event, and it'll say, I'm going to be talking about, Snyder Cut with John and with JPK and Deb with the hair kind of thing, right? But the way it works is you have to be invited in to join it, because it's still in beta.
Okay.
But there's like well over 2 million people already using it. Like, it got famous because people like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and Bill Gates have gone on, right? When they go on, thousands of people join a room.
Of course, yeah.
Just to be in the same room with them. But yeah, and it's interesting because you can meet people around the world and stuff like that too, right? So if you're into it, we will send you an invite, and we can do it under the MTJC sort of club, and because our More Than Just Whatever podcasts, right?
Yep.
We can do it that way. So I'll send you an invite.
Fire it up.
Alrighty.
I love to interact with our fans.
Yes. So yeah, it's a good time will be had by all.
For sure.
And it's 24 hours, 7 days a week kind of thing.
Does that mean we have to be accountable to our fans 24 hours a day?
Oh wait, it says Jonathan Kuline is on the wait list. Let them in.
I just added myself. I am at JBK News on Clubhouse.
Oh, good for you. Right.
Tim Mitchell moved you to the front of the wait list. Oh, look at that.
I moved you to the front of the wait list, or I invited you in?
It said, Tim Mitchell moved you to the front of the wait list, and your Clubhouse account is ready. Open or install Clubhouse to get started.
Cool.
Oh, and sure enough. Welcome to Clubhouse. You're Tim's friend. Let's set up your profile. Well, all right, let's do that.
Yeah, and you can find me and follow me too, right? So
I don't want to do that. That's a commitment.
Well, here, let me see if we can add you to the. Did I invite people to the club, to the MTJC club? We could also spin off a Spockcast.
Let's find your friends. Okay.
Yeah, I don't add my friends. You can. It's up to you. Apparently, they only store the phone number. Yeah, but and then so if one of the phone numbers is in your contact shows up, they'll send you a notification, right? But I did that for the first while, and then I went back in and turned off my contacts, so they don't want them.
Well, I'm curious to see who's on there now. So
of your friends?
There's some. There's certainly some. It's the people, honestly, I would have expected to be on there. It's my friends who work in social media and some famous-ish people I know.
Well, there you are. I can follow you now. I'm following you. I mean, I could follow you too, but I guess he's ignoring you.
I did not turn on notifications for Clubhouse, so
yeah, I don't have notifications turned on either.
I got to go in,
but I do get. Oh no! You know what I did? I turned them on, but I turned them down. Like I don't want to be, because you get notified all day long, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I don't need when random people start a room. It's like I kind of need to know when the important folks, not the riffraff.
So there's a wheel where you can go in, and I have my notifications set to infrequent. So normal is you're going to get notified anytime somebody you follow goes online. Infrequent means you'll get maybe a couple of notifications during the day. You can also turn it to very infrequent, right? And you can also pause notifications, and you can add interests to your thing. So, John, if you look at I went to a how to use Clubhouse thing a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
If you look at my profile, you see how I've got it laid out, right? I can do this right now. I can invite you to Clubhouse. We'd love you to walk them in. I am walking them in. What are you talking about? Anyway, yeah. But if you look at it, see, I've got emojis and I've got like words. So when people search for these words, my profile will come up under a search, right? So if somebody puts in MTJC, or podcast or Apple icon or iOS or whatever, right? Toronto will result in my coming up on a list in a search.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Well, let me dig into this a little bit. Again, I took a quick look at it when you guys mentioned it before, but I really hadn't. It's been a bit of a stretch. I'm actually developing another podcast, so it's been pretty busy.
Oh, interesting. Everybody's got a podcast except you, Jaime.
Well, I'm not actually on the podcast. I am the producer of the podcast, so thank God for that. So that just means I have to do a lot of the lifting. But
yeah, I'm in another podcast with Tammy right now too. She just started a new one.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So are we gonna try and pull her back in for just like a single episode to talk about Firefly?
Yeah, I think we should, because I mean it's been a long running joke with me and her.
Oh yeah,
we've been doing.
I was excited when she said she wanted to do it. I thought that'd be fun.
Oh no, and then like I pinged her and said, have you watched the first episode? Because I bought it on iTunes because I don't have a copy of it. So I bought it and I watched the first episode, and I said, have you watched the first episode? She said, dude, I'm on episode 7. Like, great. And then she just watched the movie on the weekend, so I said, okay, now eat your hat.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's funny because a couple of our friends who like one lady does a show called Synder, where she's
the one that does the episodes of.
They do one episode. So she had a friend who'd never seen it before, so she would watch it like, so she had the newbie perspective plus the seasoned person who's been through the whole series. Jean McDonald, she's also the one that wrote the Voyager viewing guide, where she rated each episode by its watchability. Yeah, and John Welker, he's been a host of ours. We've hosted him as a guest on Roundabout a couple of times, and when we asked him who his inspiration was, he said Malcolm Reynolds. And
that was my answer. Hey,
was it? Yeah, you too, right?
Yeah.
And so like, and Tammy's like, who?
Yeah, no, when I did mine, I think she knew at that point because she said, "Oh, another one, great."
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, because every now and then I'll if we have a guest on, as soon as I get any inclination that they're a sci-fi fan, I'm like, so can we talk about Firefly? And Tammy just rolls her eyes, right? So,
yep.
Definite jab. Yeah, so hell has frozen over. Tammy watched all of Firefly, but it'd be interesting to see now what she thinks, like of the fact that there's only 13 episodes. I mean, it is a bit hokey. I'm watching it again, and you can see that it's got that sort of, was it 90s or 2000s when it was done?
I think it would have been early 2000s, 2002, 2000.
Yeah, it's got that sort of filmed on a set kind of look to it in a sense.
It's not quite as timeless, but then it's certainly there are parts of it that are going to hold up.
Well, the movie's fantastic.
Oh,
right?
it is. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's again. We'll save it for when we get into it. There's a lot to like and a lot to digest about that show and movie and legacy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think Jaime's right. I think it'd be great for us to circle back and do an episode at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I think there's going to be some good conversation there. But if she's up for doing an episode in between or after, we could certainly get into that too. So maybe check with her, and we'll maybe chat it around in our Slack and see.
Cool. Yeah, I'll convince her to come on. She was a bit leery after that. Like I said, the backlash against Josh Whedon.
Yeah.
Especially in relation to the Snyder Cut, which, again, you know what? When you get hired to come and finish a job, what are you going to do?
Well, and Joss is he's not for everybody, even before all the sort of controversy around his work. And now, again, he's joined a long list of
jerks. Call them jerks.
Well, people who have, issues with power and the use of it.
Yeah. Well, respect is, sometimes not easy to give out for people. Anywho, all right. Well, let's call it.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, guys.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.